This episode of Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Coinbase. Cryptocurrency might feel like a secret or exclusive club, but Coinbase believes that everyone, everywhere, should be able to get in the door. I know for me, I've been somewhat curious about crypto, but never really knew where to start. Coinbase was a really simple way for me to check things out. Whether you're looking to diversify, just getting started, or searching for a better way to access crypto markets, start today with Coinbase. For a limited time, new users can get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up today at coinbase.com/sacred. Sign up at coinbase.com/sacred for $10 in free Bitcoin. This offer is for a limited time only, so be sure to sign up today. That's coinbase.com/sacred.
Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking Athletic Greens to boost my energy pre-workout. My one meal a day diet has me running on fumes much of the day, which I'm used to. But by the time my daily workout rolls around in the afternoon pre-dinner, I'm dragging. And drinking Athletic Greens truly made a difference. All you do is drop a scoop into some water, mix vigorously, and drink at your leisure. The benefits of taking Athletic Greens are legion. In addition to general physical and mental health, which is greatly assisted by this so-called AG1 product, Athletic Greens can also contribute to improved gut health, a strengthened immune system, and, as I noted above, a key for me, increased energy. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/sacred. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/sacred to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 195. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my beanie-wearing son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today? Toque, as they call them in Canada, the beanie, toque.
Yeah, it's like a. They got some stupid name for it, like they have for all sorts of things.
Right.
Poutine. What the hell is that?
Right.
You put French fries in a bowl. Cool.
Yeah, gravy. Wow.
But,
impressive.
But I'm doing all right. I'm having a frustrating week just dealing with just car stuff because apparently New York and California don't get along at all because they don't speak to each other. I'm apparently the first person, and this is true, the first person in the history of the United States to ever get a car transferred from Los Angeles to New York. Apparently, like, no one knows how to deal with it. So I'm having a real fun time with those little errands.
That's the thing about
antics.
Cars, Chris. They're horrible to take care of and doing all of the paperwork and everything. That's why Holly and I have one car, which for the most part, we only need one car. And some people are like, well, sometimes it's annoying when you both want to go places. And like, you don't understand the minor annoyance that we have every once in a while where we both need a car is way, way worse than owning two of the hell machines that are cars that you have to deal with constantly. I hate it.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. And it's like, it's not even like I could go anywhere right now because gas is like $48 a fucking ounce.
Yeah.
So like, it's a waste.
It's like weed prices. $48 an ounce would be really cheap weed, but yeah. That'd be like, I don't know. Maybe that's what weed cost in 1930. But by the way, I wanted to just say before we get to Dustin, we came in pretty hot against the Canadians there. I don't really know where that came from. I don't know if it was something pent up inside of us or what the case might be, but I wanted to acknowledge that nonetheless. Dustin, we can now move on to you. Dustin Furman, executive producer of all things Last Stand. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm very good. No complaints, really. Just been doing. I mentioned before the show we started rolling, I'm like in the process of trying to change around some of our production stuff, and so Chris and I were lamenting working in these various programs that we spend just hundreds of dollars on in order to do our job, and they just consistently fuck us over over and over again, whether it's Premiere, Final Cut, whatever. And this has really just been my reality my entire adult life since I started editing in Premiere in 2012. And it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's consistent and other times it's not. And just what I've learned is the nature of the beast. So, but other than that, things are very good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. As for me, I'm wearing my hoodie today, just over my head with the headphones over the head. I'll probably change that at some point, but it's quite comfortable. I have to admit, I don't know. It's a good look, but it's a
look. No doubt.
It's a look. Yes, that is true. That is a look. And it's funny. I'm looking here. I have the first act script for the role playing game that we're writing or we're making, and I thought you guys would find funny. I wanted to note that I'm putting edits on it. So basically, I'm making the story, and then a friend of ours, Jano, is writing the story and like writing the dialogue and all of this, the beat stuff. And so I'm giving him notes, like extensive notes. And normally a normal person would just in 2022 would use like Google and provide digital notes. But instead, what I've decided to do is I've just been writing them like on the paper and then scanning them and sending them to him. So I'm sure he's enjoying that.
Old school.
Okay. Welcome to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We go up each and every week. You can get the show 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Please join us over there. We have many, a person over there, thousands of you supporting us. We really appreciate it. The biggest fan-funded gaming podcast network in the history of fan-funded podcast networks, which is pretty cool. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/laststandmedia. Perks over there include access to our Discord. We have like 4,400 people in there now. You can submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show. Obviously, that ad-free early access, get your name in the credits. Of course, a key component to supporting us on Patreon is Sacred Symbols Plus. That goes live twice a week on Patreon. Those are deep dives into games and interviews and one-offs and mailbags. So the Elden Ring spoiler cast and review discussion just went live. Dustin, tell me about that. How did that go?
Yeah, it was awesome. We had our friend of the show, Fightin' Cowboy, who some of you may know. If you are struggling with Elden Ring and may have looked up a guide or two on YouTube, you have most likely stumbled across one of his videos. And of course, our very own Mr. Matty Plays as well on there. And we had a fantastic time. It feels like we just kind of scratched the surface, just because it's like, well, what do you could spend an hour talking about just the open world, or an hour about lore stuff, or whatever, builds, so either way, I think it was like hour and a half ish. So we covered quite a bit of ground. We had a great time doing that. I highly recommend it. The first 20 minutes, spoiler free, if you're interested in hearing, or maybe you're in progress in the game and just want to get a little taste. 20 minutes, there's an audible warning, so you're covered.
Cool. Well, when this goes live for patrons that same day, we'll be recording the Horizon spoiler cast and review discussion that will go live the following week. That's going to be Ben and I. I'm really looking forward to talking about that game. I love it. I think it's awesome. Excited to gush and expound. I've had a couple of mailbags go up because people have been demanding those. I feel like we were a little hesitant to continue to do them when we had so many interviews. We got to mix it up a little bit better. But speaking of interviews, obviously an interview about China, interview about Saudi Arabia, GT7, I'm going to talk to Jay, Z28 Gaming again soon in a couple of weeks. We'll do something with that. So lots of things coming up. So thank you for your support over there on Patreon, Sacred Symbols Plus. And of course, come see us live for Sacred Symbols 200. This is episode 195. So episode 200 is going to be live in Richmond, Virginia at the National, Saturday, April 30th. Chris's comedy podcast, Snark Tank, is opening, and tickets are on sale now. tinyurl.com/Sacred200, tinyurl.com/Sacred200. And actually, one of the perks on Patreon right now is a 2-part election to vote for the list. So just to remind everyone, we're putting the top 25 PS4 game list together, and we're going to reveal it and all see it together at the show. So it'll be new to all of us. And remember, you, the audience, have 25% of the weight of the list. So get in on Patreon and vote away. Okay. Let's get into some things to talk about and some little pieces of news a little bit later. Mm-hmm. Kyle wrote in and said, "Hey guys, just wanted to say a quick thank you for all that you guys do. My father recently passed away, and listening to you fellas put a smile on my otherwise down and beaten self. taking it day by day at the moment, but thanks all the same for all that you lads do. I hope you all have a safe and productive year. Thank you for writing in. I got another similar letter from Brad, who's also lost someone a loved one, and the show has been helping him. Just wanted to acknowledge that, man. Life is it inexorably marches. And I always think about that, about how in each of our lives, these catastrophic things can happen and everything else just carries on because you're not the center of the universe, right? And you have to kind of seek refuge and solace in whatever you can. And that we can be that for some people is a great honor. But stay well out there, stay safe, stay up, stay positive. Sorry for your losses, of course. Micah just lost her aunt, actually, and she's got to go home for that too. So a lot of unfortunate loss lately. Kylo, Brad, thank you for writing in. Braden Summers wrote in, and said, Colin, you need to stand down. On the topic of groundbreaking open world games releasing next to Horizon titles, you had claimed that you predicted that alongside Horizon 3, we would receive The Elder Scrolls 6. In fact, this was a listener's prediction from the previous week. That is all. Have a good day, gentlemen. Fair enough. I mean, fair enough. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Do we have a thing that if you write into the show, like it's a part of the stipulation that we can just claim any take or prediction that is written in?
Yeah, it's
like,
ours.
Yeah, it's just ours now. Sorry.
Yeah, we have to write like an indemnity clause so that we can.
Way to go, guys! Signing away your rights.
Yeah, dummies. Thanks for your access to your bank account.
Damn.
Braden, I don't know. I believe you. It sounded like a good idea, so I thought it came from me. But occasionally, the good ideas do come from you, and I'm sorry. I would never want to do that. Also, understand that recording this show, as we say time and time again, it is but a fever dream.
We're in a void.
On the show.
Yeah.
Black hole right now.
The Snark Tank guys and I have this conversation. Sometimes we'll meet before the show and we're like, did we talk about this on the show, or was this like a conversation we just had? And nobody knows. And it's like, I guess we just won't talk about it. It happens a lot. Nobody knows what the hell we do. We don't know what the hell we say.
No, it's too much to keep track of. And as I get older and more distracted by so many different things, I'm like, I don't know. And I've said that before. You can tell me I've said anything. I had this idea. I was remarking to someone that it would be fun to pay someone to go and listen to all of the podcasts that I've done over the years since like 2008 or something. And just all I want out of them is like pulling out little things about my life, right? That I like drop in there. Because there's probably little touchstones. Like I roll into Podcast Beyond 70 or something in 2009 and I'm like, damn, blah, blah, blah just happened with, whatever. And I'm sorry I'm late. It just as an example.
Yeah.
That would be because there's so many things that I just don't remember. And in fact, it's so interesting because we have this sort of audio sonic record of things that have happened.
This gives me an idea. What if maybe this is something for Lockmort or maybe just a fan? You could almost do a write-in or like a mini segment. No, not every week, but something we could do once where you can write us in one real quote and one fake quote, and we have to determine whether or not one of us actually said it. Or we could say like one for each of us. One is a real Dustin quote or Chris quote or whatever. One is a fake. And we have to determine whether or not we actually said it. That might be.
That's a fun idea.
I like that, yeah.
We'll put that out as a challenge for people. It might be fun.
That's a good point though, Colin, because like I think about like because we have so much recording. There's so much recorded audio of us talking about things to the point where it's almost useless. It's almost like when all of that, it's almost like if everybody's bank information got like hacked, like every single person in the world, and it was just like on a database, it would be almost the same as if nobody did, because it would be so inconceivable that someone would be able to find yours in that haystack.
I agree. Right.
Insane.
Imagine if for instst, I've been watching a lot of serial killer stuff recently. I go into my ebbs and my flows with just
that explains the hood in the headphones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. First of all, got like a Unabomber kind of thing going on a little bit, but
fucking Mr.
But
Roper.
I don't know if I can say that. We're probably gonna get demonetized. But nonetheless, I have this. The hood. It looks good. What was I saying? I was saying something else.
You were serial killer stuff.
Right, the serial killer stuff. So I've been ebbing and flowing with like fight videos, Karen stuff. The serial killer stuff I come to every once in a while. There's like some pretty good channels on there. And what if I were to become a serial killer? And they were like, the mystery behind this tragedy is buried somewhere in the podcasts that this guy has recorded over the last 15 years. And Gumshoe has to like just sit there and listen to all of this shit, and somewhere in there is the key to it all.
And then it's like, you know what it is? And then it's like Barry, where like the guy listens to so many PlayStation podcasts that he becomes like, oh man, I'm really interested in this industry. I think I might want to change career paths. I think I want to be a video game person.
I forgot about Barry. I love that show. I totally forgot about
Great
that
show.
Yeah, I think I watched the first 2 seasons and then I didn't watch it. Yeah, it is a really good show.
Season 3, I think, is on its way, I think.
Oh, okay. So I haven't missed it yet. Yeah, I love Henry Winkler in that show. He's fucking awesome. Anyway, okay. Thank you for writing in. I'm curious what you think about this next one, because I think this is a conundrum. James Kinslow III wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I hope all is well with you. So my girlfriend and I are currently on our way to her parents' house, and I bought a banana for the road. Would me throwing the banana peel out of the car be littering? I'm going to do it regardless, but should I feel bad for doing it? For what it's worth, no one is behind us, so no one will spin out of control a la Mario Kart or the O'Doyles from Billy Madison." Thank you, James, for writing in. So I see the point. First of all, I like your insistence. You're just going to do it. You don't care what the answer is. And that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. But I'm pretty vehemently anti-litter, just generally speaking. The banana peel is going to degrade over time, right? Very
or an animal's gonna grab it or something.
But it's just the principle of the matter. We don't just willy-nilly throw things around. I get annoyed seeing litter on the street, especially when we lived in LA. Both of us lived in LA. It's like, what is going on here? How is it possible that there is just so much shit everywhere? Why doesn't anyone take any pride in the appearance of where they live and like go find and I remember this really hitting me over the head when I went to Japan for the first time, because famously, as I don't know if you guys know, like Tokyo, there are no garbage cans. This is a thing. There are no garbage cans. They're very random and very rare. They're not like on every corner, and there's no litter.
Yeah.
Because God forbid you just wait. And it's just, so James, you're getting me worked up, honestly. And I don't like it. Chris, where do you stand on this? Is throwing the banana peel out of the window, is that littering?
Look, I'm of the firm mind that it's littering depends on the context of where you are. If you're like driving, if you're like taking like a road trip and you're on one of those long stretches of road and you've got like a banana peel, I don't think that's littering. You know, like it's just like, it's food. It's going to degrade. A bunch of like other animals are going to grab it or something. It's like, that's not litter to me. If you're in like on a city street and you throw like a whole pizza on the ground, that I think is littering.
Yeah.
Because what, a deer's not going to wander into the middle of a busy New York City street.
A rat
and
will.
Just eat all the a rat will. Yeah. But it's a bit of a different. But I think to me, like what is and isn't litter just qualifies. It's like bottles, cans, like metals, plastics, papers, like that shit drives me up a wall when I see that.
Me too.
Like especially when I'm like driving like down like a country, like specifically whenever I'm driving like long, like if I'm driving from New York to like Virginia or Maryland, which I do sometimes because I have family in those places. And I see just like bottles littering the side of the road. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Just keep you have a car. Just keep it in your car and throw it away when you get home or throw it away when you get to wherever the hell it is you're going. That's litter to me. But like a banana peel, no. Food I just think is one of those things where it's like something's gonna eat it, you know?
Yeah.
You're almost feeding the world kind of in that way.
Sure. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like the long game is actually maybe positive. But you can make these arguments. For instance, global warming is really good for the earth in the fact that it's getting greener. Right? So you can make these arguments to say like, it's good. Yeah. But to me, I think it's safe to just let's treat Earth with a little bit of respect.
Right.
I'm a little bit of I'm a environmentalist a little bit. I'm not crazy about it, but I always have been. I've always been like, I think a lot of it depends on where you're from. I'm from Long Island, which is a pretty protected beach community, right? And with a barrier island and all sorts of crazy shit going on and like protected forests and all of this. And I think maybe that was just imbued in me. Also, Teddy Roosevelt is like the most famous Long Islander. And of course he is like the king of the national park. So I think that was kind of just a little bit of a nurture thing with me as a kid. But I feel for the earth. It yearns for respect. So respect it. James, thanks for writing in. Dustin, do you have anything to add?
I think I'm with Chris in that it depends on the context. You know, if you're on a back road or something and there's like forest outside, if you throw a banana peel or an apple core or whatever, it's not a big deal. But if it's going on the pavement, no, then it looks bad. Then it's an eyesore or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's just going out in the field or whatever, this reminds me of on The Office when Meredith throws the chip bag out and she's like, "My car, my rules." And one time I was driving with my mom and she was eating an apple and we were on one of these back roads with like woods and she chucked the apple core out the window and said, "My car, my rules."
Nice.
Like quoting The Office.
Nice.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Right on. That's cool. I don't know if you guys are into Mad Men. That's like one of my favorite shows ever.
Oh yeah.
There's a scene that was pretty interesting because it
I already
caused
know
like
what
a
you're
lot of conversation at totally randomly. I mean, the show is very deep and philosophical. This had nothing to do with it. It was the Drapers were just out at a picnic, and then they just get up to leave, and they just pick up the cloth and just throw all the trash like on the ground and just walk away and leave. And it created this little bit of a hullabaloo. Like, whoa, everyone's like, whoa. Is this a thing that actually was happening in the 60s? And there was like this argument of some people like, yeah, people really did disrespect things like that. And some people were like, no, it's more about Draper just being an asshole than about anything that was happening in the 60s. And so that just reminded me of that because I was like, wow, man, there was a time when people just didn't treat the earth with respect. Treat it with some respect.
Yeah.
By all means, drive your gasoline driven cars. I don't care, but let's treat it with a little bit of respect.
Yeah.
Dylan Pedro wrote in. Said, "Hey, CDC, I was going about my business on Saturday driving home from picking up my brother from work. On the way home, I rear-ended the car in front of me. We are both okay. During the ride and the crash, I was listening to Sacred Symbols 194. The first thing I could hear after the crash was Colin talking about Elden Ring. Just wanted to share that the last thing I could have heard was Sacred Symbols. Been a huge fan of the show. Literally been listening to Colin half my life. Thank you, Dylan, for writing. Glad you're safe."
I love that.
So he admits that he was at fault. Now I wonder if I was the distraction, right?
Yeah, this is exactly why I brought this up when I brought it up initially, like 100 episodes ago, where like I'm curious, like that if that happened to you, surely we are the last people that someone heard. Surely, I know that's morbid and fucked, but I mean, statistically, one of you is at least dead.
I agree. I totally agree. Dylan, I'm glad you're not one of them. You're not a statistic. Thank you for writing in.
Here's the thing we got to consider, though, is that I was just doing some basic math here, and you think about what all the things people do. We've had people write in about what they do when they listen, and now we have some instances of people getting in crashes. If you take, like, let's say across the entire show, we've got three hours per episode, some of them shorter, some being much longer than that. 3 hours times, how many listeners approximately, Colin? 50, 60?
Yeah. Yes. So let's say that.
Let's say 60.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, okay, never mind. I'm too stupid to do the calculator. But anyway, just think about the amount of hours across everybody listening to the show. You got to think people have probably done some incredibly fucked up shit, intentionally or not, while our voices are talking about it. I mean, has somebody boned maybe while listening to Sacred Symbols?
Definitely. I mean, I think that there's been almost anything you can think of. A breakup, sex, first kiss, funny moment.
First kiss to Sacred Symbols. God help you. God help that poor soul.
All right. One more question before we get into the small news items. Jerry B wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I've been a fan since day one and first time writing in. In last week's episode, you guys were talking about the Keebler cookies as I was doing some shopping at my local Publix. That's where I shop too. I've never had any of these cookies, so I decided to stop by the cookie section and pick up the EL Fudge and Fudge Stripe cookies. I have to say, after carefully finishing them both, good for you. The Fudge Stripe cookies are far superior to the EL Fudge. The Fudge Stripes taste more like actual chocolate than the fake tasting fudge of the EL Fudge. That being said, you now have my bow, my axe, and my allegiance to the Gamer Battalion as we march upon the Keebler Elves. I'm ready to irradiate the Keebler Elves after what they've done. You know?
I'll get a nice elephant's foot going.
I'll make that farce in a glass by the time we're done with it. You understand me? After what they did?
Christ, these poor elves.
The Gamer Battalion. So the Gamer Battalion operates with a specific military MO, which is preemptive strikes. So we know what they're all about over there. And before they do any more damage, like the Iraq War, that worked out great. So we're going to go into there and we're going to fuck things around. And and
I'm in,
see what's what. What's up?
I'm envisioning an idea of it's like Spec Ops: The Line with the Gamer Battalion, and they go in and they have a mission to take out the Keebler Elves village or whatever, and when they get there they like accidentally use chemical weapons on children, and then the Gamer Battalion, they have the Sacred Symbols logo, they're like, what is this, are we the baddies here, like I think there's some lore here we could
like that,
discover.
like that Mitchell and Webb sketch where they're dressed up as like the Nazis and they're talking about the skulls on their hats.
You're right.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I love. Are we the baddies?
Yeah.
No, it's totally it's a wild situation over there, and we can take care of it in any number of ways. But what if it's like Tora Bora, where the U.S. military was fighting in the Afghan mountains, and Osama bin Laden sneaks out at the last moment and gets away? What if the Keebler Elves, like the key Keebler Elf leaders, get away like that when we're fighting on the ground? That's why I think a nuclear first strike is the only option.
Did they? Is this real, or did I just hear this on the internet and choose to believe it? Was Osama bin Laden found in like some compound with like Naruto DVDs?
I think he had a bunch of porn too.
I don't. That's real.
I believe that. Let me look it up. I'll look it up.
I feel like that's a real fact, and I remember reading. It's like, that makes sense. I mean, Naruto is terrible.
While you find that, Colin, I just did some op-ed research. Ernest J. Keebler, that's the name of the lead elf, Ernie Elf. He's the one you see on the commercials. He's target one.
Yeah, no Ernie doubt. Elf is
Ernie Elf.
Yeah. When you were never mind. I'm looking up here. It says Osama bin Laden was an anime fan and played pirated Naruto games.
Oh shit. No wonder Naruto sucks.
This is an educational show, guys.
Definitely, that's awesome.
You would have not learned without me.
That's good stuff. Well, we'll figure this out. Maybe we'll have like some sort of CIA operation in there and take out the leader.
Get the white phosphorus in the tree, in the Keebler tree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why when you brought up Spec Ops: The Line, I was like, where are you going with this? Is there going to be like some sort of rogue CIA operatives that are helping the Keebler Elves or something?
It's a lot to break down.
I want to do a deep dive into that game again, because I actually think that game is so good. It's so special still to this day. It's unbelievable. It's a really random one-off game. All right, let's get into news here. Firmware updates, PS4 and PS5 out. So go check those out if you want. There were some problems for a little while, I think, that they were having with them, but I think they're solved by this point. So it's not even worth talking about it, I don't think. But Billy Deadman wrote in and said, "Hello, Last Stand dudes. This PS5 update is great and all, but when will we reach a time where you can just update your controller wirelessly? I just had to get off my huge fat ass to plug in the controller to update. What a pullover." Now, I'm wondering what you think of this, Dustin, this wireless control update, because what bothers me about it is you can even update your iPhone without it being plugged in. I think as long as you're like above 50% health or 50% health battery. So it does bother me that you can't do that. And what's funny about it and why I wanted to ring it up was same thing happened to me when I was updating as well. And then you want to say no, but then you're like, what am I missing? Because you could say like, oh, remind me in 24 hours. Does it bother you like it bothers us?
Yeah, I feel like the thing with your iPhone, though, is it's much smarter than your DualSense, that if something goes wrong, it can probably work it out. I'm thinking the thing with the DualSense and plugging it in is that they don't want there to be any kind of interference, that the firmware update only goes halfway and then craps out and then your controller gets screwed up or something. So it makes sense to me that it needs to be plugged in. And I believe, maybe Chris, you remember, I think the Xbox is the same way. I think that controller updates you have to plug in. At least that's how I remember with the Elite controller, but maybe that's more advanced or something.
Maybe I feel like I have a memory recently of updating my Xbox Series X controller, and I think it was wireless, but they said like a notification came on the screen that said specifically like leave your controller stationary. Or something. Like I feel like that's a memory that I have. It could be wrong. Like I have no idea. Maybe you do have to plug it in. I just like invented this or dreamed this. But as far as I know, like from most of my memories updating controllers, you had to plug them in.
It wouldn't be surprising if the PlayStation way is just slightly more annoying or slightly behind. Just because that blog post was like VRR is coming in a few months. And it's like,
Oh yeah,
still,
variable refresh
we are
rate.
still waiting. This is a feature that was on Xbox One S. We
Yeah,
still
it's a
don't
little-
have it on PS5. Still no VR. Okay, whatever,
Yeah.
Sony.
Makes a lot of difference too. It's very
Yes.
curious omission. But yeah.
This episode of Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Coinbase. Cryptocurrency might feel like a secret or exclusive club, but Coinbase believes that everyone, everywhere, should be able to get in the door. Whether you've been trading for years or just getting started, Coinbase can help. I know for me, I've been somewhat curious about crypto, but never really knew where to start. Coinbase was a really simple way for me to check things out. The app makes it really easy to get your foot in the door. Coinbase offers a trusted and easy-to-use platform to buy, sell, and spend cryptocurrency. They support the most popular digital currencies on the market and make them accessible to everyone. They offer portfolio management and protection, learning resources, and a mobile app, so you can trade securely and monitor your crypto all in one place. Millions of people in over 100 countries trust Coinbase with their digital assets. Whether you're looking to diversify, just getting started, or searching for a better way to access crypto markets, start today with Coinbase. For a limited time, new users can get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up today at coinbase.com/sacred. Sign up at coinbase.com/sacred for $10 in free Bitcoin. This offer is for a limited time only, so be sure to sign up today. That's coinbase.com/sacred.
All right. Returnal Ascension is out. And Chelsea Farmer wrote into us. She said, "Hey, Sacred Crew. Have any of you checked out the Returnal update DLC yet? I think Housemarque has really distilled the game down to its best features, with the tower game mode. It is often bandied about that Sony has moved too far into the direction of cinematic playable movies and away from hardcore gaming elements. Does Housemarque show Sony's investment in gameplay-focused experiences? I think it does. In my opinion, Returnal is simply one of the best games I have played in recent memory. Gameplay is king in Returnal, particularly with this great free update. I wish the game would have gotten more of the love it deserves." Thank you, Chelsea, for writing in. So yes, indeed, the Returnal Ascension update is live. Again, to remind people, this is just a free patch for Returnal on PS5, so you don't need to buy anything. And what it introduces are a few key things. Co-op is the biggest thing, and they are pretty open. I actually don't know if you guys read the PlayStation blog post, but it's interesting. They basically acknowledge that they did this to make the game easier, and this was kind of their solution. So you can draw a person into your game and play through a stage, get to a boss or whatever, and beat it. And I think only the host gets the progress, but the person that's joining you gets like data bank stuff and weapon upgrades and all of this. And I was reading in the thing, which I thought was interesting, was you can up a downed player. So that makes it easy too. So if one of your, if you're playing co-op and your friend dies, you can pick them up. But originally they said that they originally had that so that you would have to use your health to upgrade, to give to the player, and that it was just way too hardcore, and it kind of removed the entire point of having the help to begin with. So I thought that was an interesting thing to admit. And I think, to Chelsea's inquiry, the bigger thing is just the introduction of this tower element. And I'm excited about it. I re-downloaded the game, and I will get to it at some point. It has new trophies, not a new platinum, but some new trophies, which is cool. And so I want to check it out. But Returnal's a game where I need to be in the moment. I can't just play this game. It's too for me. It's just too hardcore. It's got to be my focus. And there's too many other things coming out that I know are going to distract me. So it's a not yet for me, but certainly I will get there. That is my intention anyway. Chris, what do you think? Are you going to go back to Returnal with the Ascension update?
Absolutely. I've already downloaded it. I'm going to jump into it, I think, a little bit tonight. And tomorrow, Dustin and I, on Friday,
Yes.
which is like, if you're listening to this, it's too late. Fuck you.
Unless you listen to it instantly, then it's happening in probably 30 minutes if you start right at noon when it releases.
Exactly. It's like it's a bit. We're gonna stream it on Friday, March 25th. We're gonna do a bit of a co-op stream.
Nice.
Because it's just like this is exactly what I was waiting for with Returnal. Just something that was like a little bit more gameplay focused and a little bit more like Returnal is a very gameplay focused game, especially from the Sony first party. But just the idea of like not having to do the just this horde mode idea is like really fun. I know the co-op is a little bit different, but I'm really intrigued by this update. Returnal is one of those games that I feel like I haven't played it in a while, so it's like, oh man, I'm probably gonna be like really bad at it for like 30 minutes. But I feel like at some point quickly it's gonna click with me again.
Definitely.
And maybe I'll get the itch to actually like jump in and properly complete it, because it is one of those games that's, because it's so gameplay focused, I feel like I can play it in tandem with anything. You know, it's just one of those, like, yeah, I'll play this while I'm playing some other story heavy game elsewhere, and it's not going to siphon too much of my focus away from other experiences that I might need to pay a little bit more attention to. So I'm looking way forward to this.
Yeah, I'm amped up to hear you guys are going to play it together. I'm kind of bandying around the idea of going back and trying to get the platinum, because the platinum is really just RNG now, and it's annoying, and I just don't feel like dealing with it. But maybe it would be more fun and more tolerable to go with other people. Maybe they've fixed some of that as well. So I am intrigued by that, but it is good to hear you guys are going to play together. Dustin, what are your thoughts on the Ascension update? Again, I just want to know real quick, I just find it weird that they use that name, just because that is a God of War game. And I don't know. I just feel like you couldn't have come up with any other thing that means going to the top or rising or something. So a little bit of confusion, but a game that Santa Monica doesn't really acknowledge anyway. Dustin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I am so excited to check out the co-op mode. Colin, you and I both battled with this game, very frustrating moments, but I feel like the co-op mode will make it, I think it's still going to be difficult. Obviously, it's much easier, and I feel like it's going to just make it a less of a white knuckle experience and more of a fun co-op romp. And that's very appealing to me. I said in the past I had no intention on going back to Returnal unless they updated it with something that appealed to me, and this mode definitely appeals to me. The co-op, the Ascension mode where you're going up the tower also sounds cool, but man, sometimes some of these arcade like previous Housemarque games, specifically thinking about what's the PS4 launch one? Slipping my mind.
Resogun?
Resogun gets addicting with its score level, and so I'm like, do I want to dip my toe into that?
That's what I said last week or 2 weeks ago was, I totally agree. Housemarque is all about the score. That's what I think has been missing. I mean, Returnal's a different kind of game, but yes, it is nice to see that come back. That was, I think the game I got deepest into that was probably Super Stardust Delta on Vita, but most of their games have, these really nice grinds, and they do a really nice leaderboard situation too, usually with like really prominent flags and orders and all these kinds of things as well. So I'm looking forward to it. Glad you guys are going to be playing it together. That's fun. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Another piece of news I just wanted to share quick. Hogwarts Legacy. We saw it during the State of Play last week. Looks awesome, I think. We're really excited about it. We're going to talk about it more in the letters at the end of the show. But I did want to acknowledge at the top, because we had expressed, I think, Dustin, you were the one that might have expressed that you were worried about microtransaction fuckery. Didn't you say something about that? Someone said something about it with seeing the clocks that they were showing in the footage, like you were making things or growing things, and then it would show like a running clock or whatever.
There was like a card system in the middle of the demonstration that looked, whenever you see cards in a game, there's something about it that looks very mobile game and looks very like, oh, they could easily finagle some kind of. Are you getting an Amber Alert? Is that
the Gamer Battalion's being called in?
Yeah, what is this?
You mentioned microtransactions.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Were you holding multiple buttons on your phone?
Yeah.
And then it's like
because I was getting a phone call that said scam likely, so right. I was trying to just silence it, but I think I was hitting two buttons at the same time.
Scam. I love that's my uncle. Scam likely.
Scam likely. Yeah. Dude, that would be a funny thing if you had like a side chick or something, and you just put in your phone, her name is Scam likely.
Scam likely. Oh my god. I don't remember what the hell we were saying. Yeah,
micro. Yeah.
It looks like.
Sorry about that.
That's awesome. There are parts of that. There are parts of the demo that look a little bit like they could almost have like a Crash Team Racing, like retroactive finagling of microtransactions into the mix, like after the reviews came out. It's like, oh, how good, and then just like bam. But it's good to hear confirmation that that's not the case.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Was just the people have been throwing this around just on the Hogwarts Legacy website, hogwartslegacy.com, on their FAQ. It says other in-game purchases or microtransactions in Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy does not have in-game purchases or microtransactions. So just a piece of good news to stem that worry, as it were.
Yeah.
Dustin, is it a worry you shared? I could have sworn you were looking at me weird, as you sometimes do during the show, but I'm pretty sure you did bring something up about this.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I did. But again, we're in the void, so it's very well possible. But yeah, that's a perfect segue into the next topic that we're going to get into, is that it's the problem, the fuckery we've seen lately, where games go out, they have no microtransactions, they're reviewed, and then after launch they are implemented and then also rebalanced. And so I'm wondering, let's see, I didn't actually click to see the FAQ if it's a promise about will this game have no microtransactions at launch? Will it have them, or just, whatever? Like,
yeah, it just says it will not include them. So,
well, I would say that would be a pretty tough thing to walk back on, to just put this in your FAQ. So I think we're safe with this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm glad to have seen that, because I saw some stuff in there, to Chris's point, about some stuff that you would have assumed they were maybe getting crazy with it. And like you said, let me do the transitions. But like you said, Gran Turismo 7. Let's talk about that now. Now, I've instructed Dustin to kind of get up on what's going on with GT7, because there's a lot going on with it. People are upset about it, and I think people are upset about it not really being covered very well. And I think the reason is because I just don't think racing and gaming podcasts necessarily go hand in hand. I also just glaze over when I read about Gran Turismo 7. My eyes I just go to sleep. I can't. It's just not something that's interesting to me. However, it is a very important first-party game from Polyphony. It just came out on PS4 and PS5, and there are substantial issues with it. And Aaron Omar wrote in and said, "Greetings, gents. After highly anticipating GT7 since the announcement, the last week has been a bit of a mess, to say the least. We have an always online single-player component, predatory microtransactions, and a game loop that feels designed to wring your wallet dry. The campaign can be completed in 15 to 20 hours, leaving you with the same races to do over and over to top up your in-game credits. The cars feel great to drive, but that's not good enough to warrant this release at $70. I hope this doesn't sound like a hateful write-in, as the GT series is near and dear to my heart. Sony and Polyphony Digital have a mountain to climb now to regain user trust. I have to channel my inner Don at this point and say, look how they massacred my boy. Keep up the awesome content, guys." Thank you for writing in, Aaron. This, I think, kind of exemplifies what's going on with GT7. Now, catch us up. What's happening with Gran Turismo 7, and why are people upset?
Yeah, so I did some research, and I'll try to relay as best as I can. But since I haven't actually played this game, and I don't think I will, just because it's not my style. But I did find out as much as I can, and it seems like the issue here is somewhat twofold. It is the implementation of this always online DRM alongside the egregious microtransactions that were introduced after launch, which, to be fair to Gran Turismo 7, the store was locked, so they knew that they were going to be there, but it wasn't known what the economy of what they looked like. So, to my understanding, basically the game went down for what was a scheduled maintenance update. And during that time, it ended up lasting way longer, like over 24 hours, I believe. And during that time, you couldn't play a majority of the game when this was happening. And so that was annoying, obviously, to a lot of people that you paid for this game. And it's somewhere between live service and single player, it seems like. And so a lot of the people that are fans of the single player are rightfully very annoyed that they couldn't play the thing that they purchased. So that was kind of the first thing. But then in addition, when the game did come back online, a lot of the high earning races were severely nerfed. And I think I saw that like a few of the races were increased, but not by very much. And so it was clear that these changes were made because people were grinding out the same races over and over in order to buy cars. They kind of figured out the min-max situation. Right. And so, Sony or whatever, Polyphony, I mean, I don't know who's pulling the strings here, but saw that and rebalanced it in order to make it harder to earn credits. And the credits situation in this game, the balancing is not good. I think that one of the primary issues is that you'll have cars that are 4 million credits or something. And so the way that they let you buy credits is that you need to buy like almost double the amount than you would actually need. Like you're not able to like evenly buy $20 worth. You have to buy 40 and then only spend 25 of it or something.
It sounds like Microsoft points back in the day, where like
Yes.
everything would cost like 1,600, but you could only get like 2,000, I think, at minimum or something.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's my understanding of the situation. And what's weird about the whole thing is that who's the head guy there?
Kazunori.
That's Polyphony?
Yeah, him. So he made a blog post where he was kind of apologetic about the situation and basically said, we're working on balancing it and I really want to show you, but I can't. So just know that we're working on it. And it's like, that's not really good enough. At least I would feel in that situation. And it's like, first of all, it's bad enough that if your players feel the need to min-max and do the same shit over and over again in lock cars, that's bad. But then when you take away their ability to do that, that's just like, come on. Like, it just feels like a big fuck you to the players who are already probably annoyed. And I think Aaron writes in here and says that the main campaign, 15 to 20 hours. So people are already a little bit annoyed that the game's single player aspects are light on content. And then they have to grind to get the cars that they actually want. For a game they spent $70 on, it's like, it's a just a bunch of errors all at once, and they are all stacked up this week, leading to just the absolute downpour of negative reviews on Metacritic user reviews specifically. And so this is a ship they got to turn around because it's something that we as non-racing fans need to be aware of and need to be vocal about as well, because yeah, this isn't Colin, Chris, and Dustin's game right now, but it's still a Sony first party game. And so
yeah,
you can bet your bottom dollar that they're looking at that dollar thinking, yeah, how do we apply this somewhere else?
Indeed. Yeah, I appreciate that. And to your point, the Fury 4815 wrote in and said, hey, CDC, with Gran Turismo 7 having a worse user score than Battlefield 2042 on Metacritic because of its absurd microtransactions and being a grind fest, along with being always online even for single player content, I'm worried that this is what we can expect from future Sony live services. Has Sony gone to the dark side? I really don't want to go back to my 720p 30 frames Switch full time, but Sony is making some bad decisions. I wouldn't get so crazy with it yet.
Yeah.
This is one game, and they don't. The positive, I guess, would be they don't really have any experience doing this. They have some. I mean, obviously GT Sport and others had online marketplaces and all of that, but this isn't really their space. And if you want to give them a benefit of the doubt, you can say that they're just figuring that out, and they need to keep the game fair and thorough and valuable to people, and so they're trying to figure that out. But the other side of it to me is more negative, which is I was giving and heaping a lot, which we'll talk about shortly. I was heaping a lot of praise on the Horizon for, amongst other things, being a very slickly produced game that seemed to have been player tested and user tested and focus tested to a degree that people like Chris found annoying, where Aloy would anticipate what the problem is that you're going to have because they saw it happen over and over again. So they were basically solving puzzles for you and all of that. But I kind of like that. And I thought it showed a lot of sophistication and a lot of investment. And what's interesting is that Gran Turismo 7 is no doubt a more expensive game. It probably cost more to make. It took longer to make. And it's arguably more important than Horizon. And so you would think that they would have done the same sorts of things to try to nail down balance amongst all other things. And so what this says to me is that Polyphony probably has a long tail plan of supporting this game with a lot of content. And they might have presented this product as something that it wasn't, because to the Fury's point, he says it's a worse user score than Battlefield 2042. This has the worst user score of any PlayStation game ever on Metacritic. Now, I don't want to give that too much leverage in the conversation per se, but it's the only way a lot of people feel like they can communicate. And so anyway, Chris, do you have any thoughts on the GT7 scenario?
I just find it interesting that that I don't know, it's just interesting coming from Sony first party, because you'd think that they above most other above most other kind of umbrellas in the industry would kind of be very, very aware of like the negative perception of always online. They famously like hit back against Xbox, the Xbox One when they announced like all always online DRM and like this is how you share games and all that stuff. So you think they'd be a little bit more cautious about having a single player game, especially like something like Gran Turismo, which is like has traditionally been a very single player oriented series, that they would be more aware of the likelihood of maybe this kind of thing not going over so well. That I think is the most interesting aspect of it to me. As somebody who is not a racing fan, as somebody who doesn't really, I've only really dabbled, and I played Forza Horizon, and I thought that was great, but I got that for free, or free with Game Pass,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I would like to go. I've been meaning to play this game and like go to my friend's place because a friend of mine has a PS5 and he has GT. He's like 40 minutes away, but I can't drive my unregistered car right now.
Right.
So
Of course.
I'm a bit stuck.
Of course.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm really curious about how this really is going to manifest in the overall conversation with like internally as far as like live service goes, because we know Sony plans for what is it, 10 live services before 2025 or something like that. This seems to be like one of the first steps, like one of the first real authentic, like proper, like fully devoted steps in this play space. And it's not going over well. The positive thing about that is maybe they can learn a lot from this. But $70 game, you should expect more, I suppose. Doesn't really help just to think like, oh well, they could learn from this. It's like it's not really that doesn't really help the customer, right? For Gran Turismo 7.
I agree, and I'll also just say that I think critically, I don't know, commercially they're probably fine, but critically, these two games, Horizon and Gran Turismo, have kind of fallen a little soft, I would say. With people.
You think so? I thought Horizon was doing very, very well.
Not from my view compared to the expectations, I don't think. And Gran Turismo, I think, is in a, they're both in the 8s, I think, but there's really nothing too shiny there that I think brings back this good first party feeling. I think that both games have been, well, one game has been overshadowed by a competitor. The other game has kind of just hurt itself. And I think PlayStation kind of needed both of these titles. So nonetheless, I think that we'll find out more about how they sold. I'm sure they're both fine. And by the way, I think Horizon's awesome. I think people are being kind of hard on Horizon. I think I'll save that for the spoiler cast, but I feel like that's almost obvious. But we'll save it. All right, a couple of EA items to just talk about real quick, or just to put out there. EA Sports bring back PGA Tour series, as we know. That was supposed to actually happen this year. They kind of just said that it's not happening this year, and they tweeted out and put on their social media feeds that spring 2023 is when EA Sports PGA Tour will launch. And another interesting thing that was put forward by Push Square, the website Push Square, is that the Dirt series, the Dirt game series from Codemasters, the popular racing series, rally series, has been renamed on its social media feeds. And so it used to be at Dirt Game, and it's now at EA Sports Rally. So you can almost guarantee that the future Dirt games are going to be called EA Sports Rally. And I also wanted to point out, if you're into Apex Legends, yet another EA game, this one by Respawn, there's been a massive leak that apparently leaks a bunch of plans potentially for years to come, including new classes and more. You can find that if you Google around. But the piece of news that I really wanted to get to right now comes from VG247, which is a website I feel like we never discuss on this. They just don't come up. In fact, I went to them and I found their masthead was totally different than I remember. So here we are. But they say Lost Ark developers talk Diablo comparisons, console ports, and why it took so damn long to come west. So they basically, Sharif Saeed, a writer over there, talked to Amazon Games, the creators, the publishers, and developers of this very popular role-playing game, Lost Ark. And they say within there, it's the usual kind of PR speak, but I think intentionally so, saying if there's enough interest, we'll definitely bring it to console. So I think that this is a pretty big deal. Why? Because this game, as the article points out, had 1.3 million concurrent players 3 days after it came out on Steam, and is a massive smash hit there. Dustin, I was curious, what do you think about the possibility of Amazon bringing their Lost Ark game to console, to PlayStation, and if you think it would work on the console like it does on PC? I feel like it's a no-brainer. I don't know why you wouldn't. Amazon has no allegiance to hardware necessarily. I know they have Luna, but I don't think they care about that.
Before, I didn't think that these top-down action RPGs would work on consoles until I played some of Diablo 3 on console, and it's shockingly very good, particularly now. Like the Switch version is a great version of Diablo 3 because you can just take it wherever you go and do like co-op and stuff like that. It's awesome. So this game, man, I was so close to downloading and playing this before Elden Ring came out, and I said, no, there's no point in doing that right now. And I believe this is a free-to-play game as well. So this is one I definitely want to check out, whether it's on PC or PlayStation. I don't know if I'll wait till then. But yeah, games like this definitely work, and it's surprising that there aren't more of them. I know that there's a few other ones. There was there's the one that's the spin-off. Damn it. I'm having like total brain farts today as far as game names, but there's been some other Diablo style games that have come out on consoles, but a free-to-play one, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I should note, not developed by Amazon, just published by Amazon. By the
Right.
way. It seems like Smilegate maybe has something to do with it. I don't really know. But Chris, do you have any thoughts about this Lost Ark game? It was incredibly popular, doing pretty well with reviewers as well. It seems that it is enormously popular, and is popular in its home of Korea as well. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think why not bring it to console? You know, like if there's demand and people will play it, and no doubt people will, especially if it's a free to play game. Like, that's crazy. Because I'm looking at it, and it doesn't. I'm looking at like gameplay of it, and it doesn't. I mean, there are aspects of it that look free to play, specifically just like there's a lot of overwhelming menus in a lot of free to play games. I notice, but I mean, from an actual like gameplay perspective, this looks pretty solid. Like, I feel like it could work really well on PlayStation if just with like a minor alterations to UI, which is probably like the main reason why these things take a while to come to console in the first place. Is like, this UI is definitely very PC, what I'm saying, you know, and I imagine it takes a little bit of finagling to get that user experience feeling right on a control
mouse
pad,
and keyboard. PlayStation release a mouse and keyboard, official mouse and keyboard for PS5. I don't understand. I know that there's a lot of functionality already silently there with mouse and keyboard on PlayStation, but they should just embrace it.
I would love that. I would love a proper PlayStation mouse and keyboard for my PC. I feel like that'd be cool.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what's the last company that did that? Dreamcast had a keyboard
with the GameCube had that.
Oh, the GameCube, right? With the controller with the key. Was that? Yeah, that's right.
Was that fake? Or was that real? Wait.
No. There was one that had like a comical. Xbox had a weird one too, but that was a third party thing.
That was like a little clip onto the bottom.
Right.
It had
Yeah, there's an Xbox one, but it's licensed through Razer for the Series X. The Razer Turret, $250. Holy shit.
Yeah, I just think PlayStation's kind of missing out on this just because people like PlayStation branded hardware. They do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's got to be inevitable. And I'll totally get that when it comes out, if it ever comes out. Anyway, Lost Ark, maybe, from Amazon and Smilegate. And finally, just a couple of notes here on upcoming TV show potential. Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the awesome nutritional supplement that you can discover more about at athleticgreens.com/sacred. I started taking Athletic Greens to boost my energy pre-workout. My 1 meal a day diet has me running on fumes much of the day, which I'm used to. But by the time my daily workout rolls around in the afternoon pre-dinner, I'm dragging, and drinking Athletic Greens truly made a difference. Now, this isn't a huge surprise. Athletic Greens is made of 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. And since it's best taken on an empty stomach, it's awesome for morning consumption, though fasters like me will find much to gain benefit from later in the day. Taking it for weeks left me surprised. It tastes pretty good, actually, and it's super easy to mix and drink. All you do is drop a scoop into some water, mix vigorously, and drink at your leisure. The benefits of taking Athletic Greens are legion. In addition to general physical and mental health, which is greatly assisted by this so-called AG1 product, athletic greens can also contribute to improved gut health, a strengthened immune system, and, as I noted above, a key for me, increased energy. Taking vitamins and supplemental pills is a headache, and it's not the most effective way to add nutrition to your diet. Water solubility is key, and Athletic Greens takes it to the next level. At less than $3 a day, Athletic Greens is incredibly affordable considering its high-quality ingredients. It fits within a variety of dietary restrictions, including vegan, dairy-free, keto, and paleo, and it has an army of satisfied users with more than 7,000 5-star reviews alone. So do what I did, friends, and give Athletic Greens a try. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/SACRED. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/sacred to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Netflix. Tekken Bloodline comes to Netflix worldwide in 2022. Chris, what do you think of this?
I'm weirdly excited about it.
Really?
Like, I don't know why. I think it looked like, because I saw the trailer and I was like, this looks so hokey and ridiculous. And I saw like when there are multiple parts of the trailer where, surprise, people get punched and kicked, and they use the same kind of like weird CG like explosions that they use in the early in like Tekken 2 and stuff. I was like, this is awesome. I'm looking forward to this just because I feel like it looks appropriately absurd and appropriately ridiculous. I love the character designs are really like, everybody looks like Heihachi looks like a fucking Gears of War character. He's so beefy and thick for no reason, and I'm into it. I feel like it looks like it could be a lot of fun.
Is the panda in the trailer?
No, not that I saw, but King is in there, which is ridiculous.
He's the bear, right?
Yeah. He's the tiger man.
Oh, tiger.
The tiger's face.
Is there a bear? I feel like there was a bear.
Oh,
there's a bear.
Yeah.
There's a bear, I think. Oh, what was the bear's name? I think it was like
Tekken bear.
Oh my god. I'm
Kuma.
misremember. Kuma, yeah.
Kuma. Isn't there
there.
Wait, what's is his name Gon? Is there like a little dragon guy or a little reptile? Gon. Yeah, Gon. He's like a little dragon looking dinosaur guy.
I just love that King is like the final. Like, he's like one of the last people you see, and I'm just like, yes, bring me my tiger-headed freak. I love it.
Well, it seems like everyone hates everything these days that is coming out that's animated from Netflix. So I don't know why that is. So? I don't know enough. I don't know enough about it, but it just seems like everyone's complaining about everything. So
really,
yeah, definitely. I definitely feel that way. Yes.
I don't know. I feel like people don't. I feel like people don't like stuff like Big Mouth and stuff like that, which is just like objectively hideous. But like, I feel like these anime adaptations, specifically, like, I mean, I think of Castlevania.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
I know there's somebody in our audience who hates when I bring it up because they think it's terrible, but you're wrong. Castlevania is fantastic.
It's definitely
and I feel
terrible.
like
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's I love it, but
dude,
if it's even close to as good, or even if it's just entertaining, like Tekken doesn't need to be like, what are you looking for out of Tekken? It's a story about like a guy who drops people off mountains like every year or something. It's like, this is not Breaking Bad, and you shouldn't expect it to be. Just enjoy it. Looks ridiculous. Have you seen the trailer? Did you watch the trailer for this?
I just scrubbed through it as we were
looks
talking.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it honestly just looks like, I don't have an eye for anime. I'm just not into it. It's just all looks the same to me, or like the same. It's just stylistically.
I kind of agree, but
I
don't know.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Stand down.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were trying to say something. You were trying to interject, but I don't know.
Well, I was gonna reference JoJo's Bizarre Adventure being exclusively on Netflix and how that's the redeeming value. But then the moment kind of passed, and I was like, people don't want me to talk about JoJo anymore. But this Tekken show, I'm watching just this little Netflix preview thing. This actually looks really good. I don't know anything about Tekken really, so I'll probably check this out.
Yeah.
God, if only I had the time to check out the Tekken Netflix series. I just don't have time. Sorry, guys. Finally, Chris, I was especially curious to see what you thought of this Plague Tale. Looks like it's going to be turned into a TV show. This is not a huge surprise. Comes from Eurogamer.net. Quote, set in medieval France, A Plague Tale will now be adapted using talent from the country, end quote. So not a huge surprise there. Asobo, of course, the developer is French. And a sequel, of course, is coming out as well through Focus Entertainment. So this is exciting. It's interesting. Plague Tale Requiem is the sequel's name. I'm curious, Chris, what do you think about the possibility of a series about A Plague Tale? Seems like actually maybe workable, especially because this game's not entirely contingent on combat. It could be a very place and time driven story.
Yeah, I think that has potential to be pretty cool. I do think, again, with these like story heavy games, I feel like these types of things are a little bit redundant because I feel like we already have like a very, very good story in the game. And I think part of what's compelling about the story is that you are taking part in it. And I think that's kind of like what makes games so cool in the first place. And I feel like when you take that interactivity away, you're just kind of left with a story that's pretty good. So ultimately, like, I don't know if I'm excited about it, but I think it works. I think they could do a good job. I'm looking up the price of rats right now just to see if how expensive this show is going to be. And rats are pretty expensive, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like, I was expecting like, I don't know, $50.
Yeah. That sounds right.
But this is, this is a lot.
Got to get the Costco.
You apparently
deal.
got to weed them out for parasites, and maybe they could buy one rat and green screen him, and
or
like
they could just breed them
composite
themselves.
him,
It would only take a few weeks, right?
just
have a rat farm.
I just love the idea of like poorly, like the same rat poorly composited.
It reminds me of the
like
Oompa
millions
Loompa
of
in the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Deep Roy was his name. I for some reason know this.
Yeah, that's some sort of knowledge, huh?
I don't know why I know that. It was like one guy, and they made. Did you see the animatronics they made of that guy too?
No, I don't want to see that.
When all the Oompa Loompas are in the boat. When all the Oompa Loompas are in the boat, it's him doing that, but like because it's all a bunch of other puppets of him, and he moves it, and then the oar moves the other puppets. It's so creepy looking. I love it.
I saw that in the theater, and I was just so disenchanted. Never saw it again.
It is a disenchanting film.
It is. It's I just couldn't believe it. All right. Well, Plague Tale TV, maybe. All right, let's get into what we're playing. I say we start with Dustin today.
Yeah.
Since you're playing Horizon Forbidden West, Dustin, what do you say?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say. I'm still working through this game. I'm surprised. The leveling does seem a little strange to me overall because I'm almost level 25-ish. Which I haven't really played a ton between last week and this week, but I was talking to Ben and I'm like, well, does this mean that I'm about halfway through the game? And he was like, no, you still have a considerable amount to go. I'm like, well, that's kind of odd to me. Am I going to be, even with doing minimal side stuff, am I going to be hitting close to the level cap by the end of this game? Just, it was surprising me based on the conversations that you've had in the past about how you felt the game was balanced with leveling. But overall, man, I was trying to figure out if there's a way that I could say this in the show without it being a spoiler, but I really can't. I just did something in the game with a really cool location that was very bright and colorful underwater. And it was very cool, if you know what I'm talking about. It was like probably the best part of the game so far. Not that the stuff before was bad, but it was just like, I'm a sucker for like bright and beautiful HDR scenes. And this was one of the absolute best examples I've ever seen of that.
It's a beautiful game. And, I've noticed from our audience on Discord and just kind of poking around is they're just seeing, again, maybe I'm just not seeing what's out there, but it seems to be a lot of negativity about this game. And I don't really get it. I don't know what the fuck people wanted out of this game that's not been delivered. I think it is so exceptional that I'm so confused by, like, authentically confused by people kind of just shunning it and being like, it's just more of the same. It's all right. I'm like, this is one of the most AAA games I've ever played in my life. I don't know. I'm so confused about it. Chris, what do you have to say about Horizon as you're playing it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I haven't had a ton of time to play in this last week just because a bunch of Jesus Christ, just dealing with all sorts of stupid people. But I think, I'm having a good time with it. I still think it's very, very good. The things that have bothered me have persisted to bother me, but they're less. Like I notice it a little bit less. Like as I get further into the game, I notice Aloy doesn't give away things as much as she does earlier in the game. I do think that lasts a little bit too long, even for the start of the game. I feel like 10 hours in, you shouldn't be telling me how to jump up a rock face. Like I've definitely done this like thousands of times by now.
She always mentions the glider for me. Oh, I can glide down there. I
Yeah,
can glide this.
Yeah,
I know how to use the glider. I know.
Yeah. I think I can glide over there. And it's like, I know. I don't know. It's just that just continues to bother me, but I notice it's less and less as the game goes on, which is I'm so thankful for. But I'm still enjoying it. I think it's beautiful. I think that section that you mentioned, Dustin, is like definitely one of the standout moments so far. It's just like it's really cool to see the world be impacted by what you do in it. And like that's like almost universal for anything. I know plenty of like successful open world games do this specific thing. Like they leave an impact on the world based on what you've accomplished in it. And I think that's like the way that Horizon Forbidden West does that in that section, which I don't want to spoil because I think it's genuinely that cool, is really, really striking and really cool and really visually just impressive. And I don't know, I'm enjoying it. There's this one moment for whatever reason in free roam where I'm like I'm trying to go somewhere and it says like I've never seen this. I never saw this before, but I saw this building and I tried to glide into it because you can. Except you can't. There's like an invisible wall and it says you can't be here. Like the screen that says like you can't be. It's like a turn away from the battlefield.
Oh yeah. Like
I'm like,
you're at some sort of like story boundary or something probably.
Yeah.
That's usually I hadn't noticed that in the world, but I did notice that. I don't know if you guys saw it in the quest log. Sometimes it like locks you out of quests. It says you can't do this quest right now. Which I thought was a pretty elegant way. So that might have been the geographic way that they stopped you from going into that area.
Yeah.
I hate invisible walls. Ugh.
Yeah, I especially in an open world game. I don't know. Like I remember, like it kind of took me aback to see that in this because I can't remember the last time I literally can't remember the last time I've seen that in a game. I don't play many open world games. I haven't delved into Assassin's Creed. Maybe it's there. I really don't know. But that kind of bothered me a little bit because I was like, all right, I guess I'll go back and grind a couple more random side quests. But I'm a pretty beefy Aloy now, man. I got all sorts of I got my ammo capacity is hilarious. So I'm just like spamming it, raining hellfire upon these poor docile creatures for no good reason. I feel bad sometimes killing them.
The little animal. Yeah, that's sad. It is sad. There's something sad about it. I totally agree.
Yeah, but I'm still enjoying it. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are suggesting it. There's a weird like I think there's a degree of negativity that is warranted in the sense that like this is again, and I've said this before. I don't want to say it again after this, but I think Horizon Forbidden West is a really good example of all of the negative design decisions that have plagued open world game design for the last 10 years. It's a great example of those decisions done in the best way that they can possibly be done. And I think because of that, it kind of suffers because people are like, oh, it's just Assassin's Creed. Oh, it's just all these other games. Well, it's like, it's not exactly. It's like, it's way, way better than those games. Like if this was a Ubisoft game, it would be the best game that they've ever made. Like without a shadow of a doubt. Like, but it's definitely following that design formula, and I understand why people are tired of it, but that doesn't make it like a 6 out of 10. It's a bit ridiculous, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time with it. I think the story is really fun. I like these characters, and I'm looking forward to getting to the end of it because I'm wondering where the hell Silence is. Right now, I'm like, what the fuck happened to you? Like he just vanishes for like a really significant portion of the game.
Yeah. I love the story. Yeah, I'm excited to really delve into it on the spoiler cast. We'll have that up for Sacred Symbols Plus for patrons next week, so look forward to that. And Chris, you're also playing Elden Ring. I wonder if you have anything else to say about that experience.
No, I've just been, it's been my go-to stream game just because it's good engagement. It's the story. People want to see people stream Elden Ring first off, so it's just smart. But also the story is so hands-off that it's very easy to play and also engage with chat. So I've been kind of doing that a lot. I still think it's phenomenal. I'm engrossed. I'm still consistently impressed by how much this map continues to open up, even though I get to a point where I'm like, I must be like 90% done with the map, and then suddenly, I'm in the sky now. I'm underground. What the fuck is this? Like, there's a whole map underneath it. Like, it just, I don't know. I'm like impressed by the breadth of it, not only like horizontally as far as like how far the map opens up, but how vertical this open world is, despite feeling like, oh, it's just a bunch of plains and a bunch of mountains, and then you realize, oh, there's a cave that goes under the ocean, and then it takes you up into this island that you thought was, backdrop or like art for like the boundary that you couldn't go, and then you're like, I can go here. It's really enamoring. I think the exploration is really the strongest part. There's a lot wrong with it. I think UI design is really rough. I think something as simple as when your horse is killed, when Torrent is killed, and you have to bring him back with a flask, and you're in like the middle of like a battle, I already have to press triangle left on the D-pad. Don't then bring up a menu that says, do you want to use a flask? And then have the first option be no. I want my horse. I very clearly want my horse. Give me my horse. So there's like little like really like slight, like really small things with like just menu navigation and just like the weird prioritization of choices that the game gives you in very specific contexts. And it's just like, why would this be the way you presented this to me? But as an open world game, I'm still enamored with it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Like, you can, in the near future, next episode, just assume I'm playing Elden Ring still, because it's what I'm going to be playing, and I don't think I'm going to have anything new to say about it.
Fair enough.
I'll let you know when I feel like something gets fucking terrible, because believe me, I'm starting to feel like I wandered into this space and I got backstabbed by an invisible thing that I had no hope of even remotely countering, and I'm like, okay, so here is where we're going to get to like the point where I might need to buy new controllers because I sense a shattering occurring.
A shattering in our midst.
Oh,
I am still playing, so I'm 15 hours in, and I'm about 20 hours in. I would say I played 15 hours or so in the last week.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty accurate clock. I try to like go back to the menu when I'm just sticking around and I'm reading something or get distracted. So I'm just trying to keep that clock accurate. I have what I wouldn't call it a love-hate or a like-hate. I would call it a interest-hate relationship with it, where I get to the end of my rope with this game and then something happens and I'm like, oh, right. And what happens is, first of all, I'm not good at the game. In fact, I wanted to read this question here from Alex Shanner. He says, hey guys, my 16-year-old son made fun of me because after 40 hours in Elden Ring, I've only fought and beat one of the Elden Lords, whereas after 18 hours, he's bested 3 of them. I'm 51, so my motor skills and reaction time have declined. Anyway, it just got me thinking again about my biggest fear. Will there be a day where I can't play video games anymore? Dustin and Chris are still babies, but Colin, is this a fear you share? And does it add to your crippling anxiety? It's something that I don't fear. It's something that I acknowledge. I know that I don't play games as well as I used to. I just know. I bring that up a lot. And I am really bad at this game. Like, I don't know. I think it's some combination of I just have no patience. I don't like playing defense, for instance, in games. And I'm just like, fuck it. And I just do the, Leroy Jenkins thing after a while. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm going to try and see what I can do. Brute force my way. Of course, it doesn't work. Then I get mad at the game. But there's always something around the corner that has me intrigued. Chris, you're totally right. Wherein I come across this cave and I'm like, oh, where's this going to lead me? And sometimes it just leads a little bit down a path and there's like a body with an item. And then sometimes the path leads to this massive 4-story dungeon underneath the rocks that there's no indication that would even be there. And stuff like that is really cool. And I like how the world is truly interconnected and alive. The last the last of these games that I played was Neo, and which I tried. People might remember, and if you were listening in 2020, I think it was, I was really trying to play Neo. I really gave it a good shot, and I liked it, but I was really bad at it. And I liked how that game felt like it was like one thing to the next. Like you're in the boat area, and then you're in the town, and then you're in the this, and then you're. And this game, I like that it's all just do whatever you want. In fact, Dustin, I've been texting Dustin, just showing him maps and stuff, and showing him like the natural way I found around the game, and I just totally found my way to places I probably wasn't even supposed to be, just by nature of exploring. And I think that's fun because there's nothing per se like Fallout had, wherein it's like, oh, you definitely shouldn't be over here. The enemies are gonna kill you. You can probably kind of like slink around and get really far in Elden Ring without doing much. But eventually I had to kind of rediscover the path. And we're talking about balance. And I just think what frustrates me about this game is I just don't think you get enough experience points for what you do. I like the idea. I do like and Mike and I were talking about this. I'm like, I really like the risk reward of you spend those experience points, and if you lose them and you don't get them back when you die, you're done with those experience points. And I love that. It's always been that way, and I think it's cool. I think that's a really cool mechanic and a really cool style. But it's like, Jesus, give me something. You're asking me for 10,000 souls or whatever they're called, and I'm getting like 50 or 60 per kill. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, there are specific enemies too where it's like they'll just be, because you get points for killing anything, you know, like if it's like an eagle or like a cat or like a deer or something, or an enemy. And sometimes there'll be this enemy that'll just sit there and he won't do anything, and you can kill him and he'll give you like 2,000 souls, and then you can fight this guy who's like super hard, who like actually like has a ton of health, who like will one shot you, and then you'll beat him, and then you'll get like half of this. Like there's definitely like a huge balance problem in Elden Ring, like without a shadow of a doubt. Like I'm just because I'm confused, dude. I had to stop playing the other day because I lost 150,000.
Oh my god, that would be done. I would be done if that happened.
I was like, I don't even know what happened. I just like immediately, like I turned the corner and this chariot, this rolling rock chariot insta killed me, and I was like, that's 150,000 runes. And I was on stream too, and I was like, all right, guys, we're gonna play every other game that we have right now, and maybe we'll come back to this in a year.
That's a soul killer. I mean, pardon the pun.
It is a soul killer. I went back into it, and I'm like, I'm back on the grind again. It speaks to the open world that I'm even remotely considering jumping back in after something like that. But I agree with that criticism. The idea of like, it's really confusing what gives you what, because it's almost like you can't really plan for like, oh, I'm gonna go after that guy because he's certainly gonna be a good payout, because you really just don't know.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. Like I noticed those two big creatures that pull that cart. You can attack them, and they're each worth like 1,000 souls.
The giants,
yeah, and that's kind of nice. And I try to just be patient, and then I try to use those golden stones, whatever they're called, to like get me above the runes, to get me above the number I need. I think the most I've lost is 10,000, which is a lot for me, because I think I'm only in the mid 30s. If 150,000 would let me level up probably 10 or 15 times or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
so you're way further than I am. I mean, that would have lost my mind if that happened to me. But
it was soul crushing.
But everything is I'm just getting by. Like and it's so funny, like the game, when I'm at my wit's end with the game, where I'm like, fuck this. At first it happened with Margit, which is like a joke now. But at that time, I was like, oh my God, just let me beat this one boss and just get it through. And then I got through it. And then I knew that Godric was kind of there. And I was talking to Dustin. I had totally missed Godric. Like I had no idea where he even was. I just totally missed it. And I was like way north of where I was supposed to be. So I eventually went back and explored this castle, which I thought was fun. And Jesus Christ, I fought this thing 50 times probably. And finally last night, I beat him and saw that silver trophy pop. And I was like, fuck, now I'm just kind of curious now. And I think that's the way the game gets me, but I'm running out of time and space and patience for this game. I'm looking at the trophies, and I've said this last week, one of the so fascinating things about this is just looking at the trophy completion percentages. And that's what makes me realize that I'm just not very good at games anymore. Is 61% of people beat Godric. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, Jesus Christ. It felt, I said it on Discord, I'm like, that took everything I had. of mental preparation. I went and got like some more sacred tears, and so like my health like refills entirely when I have 6 flasks and they're all health, and I have my wolf companions, and I have the female companion that's like right outside the door, and I'm just holding on for dear life.
Yeah, no, it's a tough fight. You know what's wild? Margit, for whatever reason, kicked me to death. I don't know what I must have tried that fight like 60, 70 times. Like, I don't know what the hell. Like, I just couldn't nail it. And then Godric, in comparison, was a lot easier by the time I had finished. By the time I had beaten Margit, I think. Maybe that was like, I had just gotten better naturally just by learning how to fight Margit. I don't know. It was weird, but it's that satisfaction of like, oh man, I beat him. Which means it's like I probably could beat everybody else.
Exactly.
It's like it lures you, and like I don't think any other FromSoft game has lured me in this way. I think largely because the open world is just so vast and so rewarding of your exploration that like even if you're like, oh man, I got to grind, that's not really that big of an ask because there's so much new shit to see.
Right.
And I find myself enamored and captivated by it.
I totally agree with that. I think there is something special about the way the game keeps you interested in coming back for more. I just wish it gave you a little more. See, I don't mind the nebulousness. I don't mind, like, I was hysterical laughing last night because I don't think it's a spoiler, but I just like found some random cave and I was exploring and it was just some corpse or like some spirit, and it said something about like, you know, take me grapes, me lord, or some weird shit like that. And then just next to it was an item of just like some disgusting grapes. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it's like, what is this? Like, what weird shit is this? But there is something about, and what I think I've realized is and I haven't found anyone specific. I don't know anyone in the Souls community really, but I've been looking up boss stuff like and finding these videos and just realizing how complex the boss battles are is actually really astounding in terms of everything going into them. And what I really love the most is watching these videos because they slow them down and show you the attacks and stuff, and the animations are nuts. The what's his name? The Godric creature has all those hands, I think.
Yeah.
And you see the hands like giving like the axe to the next hand, to the next hand, to the next hand. Like it's all animated as it's going. And I'm like, Jesus, this is insane. And so I really respect that. I will say from a technical point of view, I had this really with the horse, which I love the horse, calling the horse, especially when you're like running away and the horse just comes from underneath you and you just start galloping.
The double jump.
Yeah, it's great. I love the horse. I love that there's no like, where is the horse? You have to whistle for it and turn around and Epona is there and it just came out of nowhere. Like it's just like, all right, let's just get this over with. So I appreciate that kind of gamification about it. However, I was running away from a creature, like fucking booking it away because I thought I was going to die. And the game was just chugging and it was just loading in front of me like over and over again, just loading in front of me because I was going too fast probably for it to stream. And so when people say, because I know, especially with PS5, it seems so personal because it seems like the experiences are so different based on the components, the mystery components you have in your PS5. I think that might have something to do with it, but there are serious technical problems. This is probably the biggest AAA game that I've played that had the most serious problems technically. It hasn't crashed or anything, but it definitely chugs. There's definitely texture pop in, and the fog, at least in the places I'm in, is so intentional, it seems, to make it easier for the game to run. So there are little things that are wrong with it, but I acknowledge that I'm having fun with it, and I'm playing as a warrior. Oh, by the way, what I figured out, what made that Margit fight for me possible was using a buckler and then timing my blocks to like shove him away and then stabbing him or whatever. But it doesn't seem like that really works with almost anyone else. And now I'm using just a normal shield and blocking as I go. And I'm fighting that way and trying to get in like my little stabs and whatnot, rolling around. So that's how I beat Godric, but I'll see what's beyond it. I played a little bit after that, feeling kind of high on my horse, and then I was getting my ass kicked. So I think there are a few thousand souls in the field for me to go find. But Dustin, what I know, throwing it over to you, I keep thinking of you because obviously you love this game and we talk about it, but I'm just so astounded that you found your way through to the platinum in like 65 hours. I have no idea. I have 3 trophies after 20 hours, 3. And I think I'm probably lucky to have any of them. I'm really at the very edge of my skill, I think, at this point. I don't know. Right. I don't know that it's going to get much better for me. So what do you make of our feedback here is listening to Chris and I speak?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the platinum, I mean, towards the end, using a guide will greatly speed up how quickly, because there's a lot of like, go get this item. Well, where is it? You know, like you can wander around for 10 hours or you can use the guide or whatever. And so that's what I did. And also something important to point out when talking about balance is that they recently did rebalance a lot of the stuff in the game. And man, one boss in particular, basically the hardest boss in the game, I won't say who it is or whatever, but people who've played it know, basically a lot of players are resorting to, it's not a full-on cheese. Like, it's not just like, oh, instant win, but it's like people are min-maxing as far as you can go to have a chance to beat this boss. And what's ironic now is that the method that I used to beat this boss, which I had to restat my character for, has been nerfed to some extent. So it's possible now that I would have a much harder time with some of the bosses now than I did in the initial playthrough because of the balancing. And who knows? We'll see. I'm going to replay through the game. I'm replaying through the game now on stream. So eventually we'll see if my skill is not up to the task now that they've changed some things. But I think the thing overall, Colin, for you is that there's a lot of things that just from a combat perspective to learn. I remember once, I think it was an old kind of funny video where you were showing someone how to play Mega Man, or maybe it was Chris, or you've done that probably in multiple different videos.
Showing everywhere I've been. Yeah.
And like you had to say like, when you get hit, there's iframes, invincibility frames, where you need to take advantage of that. And so there's certain like things like that in Souls that you learn as well. It's like, okay, when you roll, there's iframes. So if someone attacks you and you roll, that's the moment to do it. Even if their sword goes through you, if you're rolling in that moment, you're not going to get hit. And so a very important thing is to make sure you're not too heavy, because if you're too heavy, you just kind of plop on the ground, a fat roll, as I like to call it. And so these are things that aren't obvious to people, and it's not obvious to the person playing, and the game doesn't make it obvious that this small things like that are going to make a huge difference. And in some of the text conversations we had, the some of the weapon systems, as far as like stats and like if you make it a quality weapon or if you make it a magic weapon or whatever, what effects does that have on your stats? How does that relate to the different scaling of the weapon? Things like that. It's not easy to just pick up and play, but it's a game that I find rewarding to learn its systems, but it's not going to be for everybody, because there's going to be a lot of frustration and trial and error that comes with that. So, yeah, I mean, Elden Ring is by far the most successful mainstream From Software game yet. But I'm really curious. I mean, I guess you said 60% for that trophy completion, so it is clearly resonating with a lot of people. But I'm guessing there's a lot of people that also picked it up and thought, ugh.
One of 5 people. I'm so fascinated by the trophy stats for this, because what I think is so interesting is that 3.7% have the platinum trophy. 3.7% is a high platinum number for, I think that's even higher than Horizon, for a game that is very difficult to do. So it obviously has its hardcore fans, which I think is a big part of that. But there's something interesting in the numbers, because the game sheds 1 in 5 players according to trophies before you even get to the keep or whatever that thing is. So 1 in 5 people are just like, nope, after like a little while. But then it's carrying more and more people through to the point where I think there are only a few trophies now that are above 50%, and then they fall off. And so there's something interesting in the stats for sure. And I'll be watching them. That's why I love trophy stats from a commonality number, and which I'm so glad they finally have started to show over the last few years, because you can really garner a lot. They were afraid that you can get too much out of that, but I think most people don't want to do the work to try to figure things out. I just think it's fun personally. Like if you have the statistics for Steam achievements, for trophies, and for Xbox achievements, like who beat the game or who has 1,000 gamer score or whatever, and then just put that into the sales numbers, you can literally figure out how many people 100% of the game. I think that within reason. So it's a lot of fun. And by the way, I wanted to bring this in really quick, because Kevin Corkum wrote into us and said, "Hello, boys. The conversation surrounding Elden Ring has been fascinating to me. I watched a video from a random YouTuber who hated the game because it defied quote unquote basic gaming design principles. My question is this: is there such a thing? Personally, I don't think any game designer should have to follow any rules when designing a video game, but I'd love to hear your input. Thanks for all that you do." I respect this game's adherence to rules. And I don't think that they're necessarily arbitrary. And sometimes they're clever. I watched a video where it showed you if you drop a certain item off of a cliff, it'll break. And if it breaks, that means it's not safe to drop down. And if it doesn't break, it means it's safe to drop down. And I was like, that is really clever. That's like very clever Kojima level stuff. So Mike is always there watching. She's been playing Triangle Strategy and other things. And I keep making her laugh because when there's something funny or something ridiculous or something clever or something scary, I'm always like, oh, that Miyazaki. You know, because I assume that's
dirty dog.
You know, I'm sure he has nothing to do with most of this stuff. But like I see a hot air balloon in the distance, this like eldritch hot air balloon. And I'm like, what the fuck? You see like a skeleton with a big, just sitting on top of his silhouette, basically sitting on top of like a hill, and you're like, geez Louise, man, what is going on here? So there's something mysterious about it. I'm curious, Chris, what do you feel about this idea of basic gaming design principles? Do you think that there's such a thing and that the game doesn't adhere to them? Because if anything, I feel like what this game does, whether you like it or not, and I don't like it as much as most people do, it's a game. Like, I think that it's very much a game. And so I think it's actually pretty rooted in some sort of philosophical principle.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely defies a lot of principles that have been defined by a lot of open world design in the last 10 years. I think just the lack of waypoints and the minimal HUD when you're exploring. I think some of the things have made a bit of a comeback because as people have gone on to joke about how claustrophobic a lot of modern day game UIs can be and a lot of HUDs can be. I actually remember back when Destiny was first out. I remember that was what was one of the most appealing things about Destiny was how minimalistic the HUD was, and how it was just like in this bottom left corner, that's your weapon, your supercharge, all that stuff, and it's just there, and then the rest of the screen is just the world around you. And it's like, I like the way it does that, and I think it does defy certain things to a degree. But like you said, stuff like with the rainbow stones, like when I found that out, that was really cool to me, because like you said, it did remind me of like a Kojima type thing. It's like, here's this item that has a very specific purpose, but that very specific purpose is wildly useful. Like I've used, ever since I found out what rainbow stones do,
I don't even know. I have them, but I don't even know what they do.
Those are the things that drop when you drop them off a ledge and they break.
Oh, that's the ones. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought okay. I thought it was just an item. No, it's less clever than I thought it was. I thought it was an item that you just happened to have that you just get rid of, and it. I see what you're saying.
No, it's like I think you can craft it. I'm not super sure, but like I have a ton of them, like somehow, because I guess I just haven't been using them because I didn't know what they did.
Yeah, that was really cool. Okay, I understand. Right,
but it's been a lifesaver in like dungeons and stuff like that. But even simple things, like I remember early on, when you'd go into a cave, right, and you'd be like, wow, this is genuinely dark. Like dark, not like Halo Infinite dark where it's the sun's up but everything's blue. It's like genuinely pitch black, and you're not going to be able to see anything if you don't have that lantern thing, or if you don't have a torch. And you can see more of the cave with the torch if you raise the torch up, and little things like that where it's like, oh, this is so, there's something so appealing to me about just these little things that you get to interact with the world about. Like, okay, I want to see more of this cave, I'm gonna raise my torch, and it feels like really, like you really feel like you're exploring, and just these little moments, I'm like, damn, like this is so nice. It's not even like other Souls games, like previous Souls games, where you kind of just have a light emanating from you because we want players to see. You know, it's more just like, no, you're not going to go in there without a torch, are you? What, are you stupid? You're going to get murked by a spider with a handgun or whatever the hell, some crazy enemy that you. I just found this cave with this bear that's like the size of the fucking Grand Central Station.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I tried to fight him, but he killed me.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, I'll come back to you later when I have a sniper rifle or something. But I don't know. I don't think that it defies basic design principles. I think it's very, very tabletop in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate that about it. And it has its rules,
right?
And those rules don't break. Like there's very rare occasions where there's one part that kind of bugged me, where you get used to fall damage being really deadly, Like I've definitely, before the Rainbow Stones, I was misjudging a lot of jumps and being like, all right, well, whoops. But then there are these towers that you go in and you jump onto a platform and then the bridge breaks and then you fall way further than you've ever fallen. But because it's like a set piece thing, you survive. And I'm like, I don't know about this. This kind of bugs me. But aside from that, I don't know. I love the way it's designed. I'm really enamored with it. I'm very charmed by it. And I'm just, I don't know. It's not often that you find games that are designed this way. And I really appreciate it because it feels just refreshing.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I think I probably won't see much more of it. We'll see what happens. Mitchell Lunsberg actually wrote in and said, hi, guys. Any thoughts on Ghostwire Tokyo? Now that the reviews are out, I haven't seen such a mixed bag of reviews since Death Stranding. With reviews all over the scoring spectrum, does it leave you more or less intrigued with a game? I know how we all feel about reviews and the scoring system in general, but they should be entertained nonetheless. I hope to hear your thoughts. So thanks for writing in. Yeah, Ghostwire's next for me. I actually just quote unquote pre-ordered it just to pre-download it. It is getting mixed reviews, but it's a PlayStation 5 exclusive. I feel like I should definitely, timed anyway, I think I should definitely give it a go and check it out. And then actually Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is getting pretty good reviews, and I think that game looks awesome. So I think I might go there as well. And then of course Lego Star Wars. So I'm just going to be pretty distracted coming up. It's going to be hard for me to keep this game going. Maybe I can keep this going on the side along with one of those games at a time, but I'll be moving on. But nonetheless, yeah, I've tried to spend time with Elden Ring. I'll continue to spend time with it. I'll play more of it tonight, and we'll see where it stands next week. All right, boys. Let's get into the news. Big news item, a confusing one. A lot of people are confused about this. Obviously, many people wrote in about it. Number one, in a move that continues to break Sony's once consistent internal logic about studio acquisitions, PlayStation has purchased outright the fledgling team Haven, making it first party. Haven, of course, is barely a year old and was revealed in early 2021 as a collaboration between longtime Ubisoft producer Jade Raymond and talent she had worked with at both Ubisoft and later Google. The team is located in Quebec and thus marks Sony's first foray as a first party into the vibrant Canadian development scene. Now, Sony has never acquired a team like Haven before. Though the team's existence was first announced through PlayStation itself, the relationship was from the start second party in nature, meaning Sony was funding the development of a game and IP it would own through a startup entity. In that case, Sony typically buys teams after they've worked on at least one game alongside PlayStation as producer and publisher, and so the purchase of Haven is the first notable exception in the brand's nearly 3-decade history. With that in mind, this move also comes as a surprise as the studio seems somewhat unstable at the top. You'll recall that the studio's co-founder, Sebastian Puel, left the team just last month, and this could perhaps be the reason why. We still don't know what PlayStation is so impressed by, as they've only described Haven's game in broad strokes. But here's what they had to say in part on the PlayStation blog, quote, "From their first pitch, we were inspired by Haven's vision for creating a modern multiplayer experience that brings gamers together in a positive and meaningful way. We were confident in their creative and technical expertise to deliver on such an ambitious project, and we're thrilled to invest in their journey developing a new original IP for PlayStation," end quote. Jade Raymond herself adds in part, quote, "Our first new IP for PlayStation is on track to deliver a AAA multiplayer experience with a vision to build a systemic and evolving world focused on freedom, thrill, and playfulness that will keep players entertained and engaged for years," end quote. She notes that part of the advantage of joining first party for Haven is having access to the deep well of PlayStation-centric development knowledge at studios like Guerrilla and Naughty Dog and others. And hey, buckle in. Jade Raymond says the game they're working on is a, quote, "wondrous adventure that will span generations," end quote. In an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, Herman Holst, the head of PlayStation's first-party teams, thankfully notes that, quote, "We will always carry on making these single-player narrative-based games, such as Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us, and Horizon Forbidden West. But we're invested in live service games because they're incredibly exciting for us. It allows us to build a larger world. It allows us to create really meaningful social connections between players. We have quite a few now in development or conceptualization, so we're setting up capabilities internally. But exactly for that reason, it is so exciting for us to welcome to the family a group of people who have a lot of experience with live service games," end quote. PlayStation Studios, by this podcast count, is now 16 teams strong, with nearly a half dozen support and port teams in addition. As it stands, the core family consists of Bend, Bluepoint, Firesprite, Guerrilla, Haven, Housemarque, Insomniac, London, Media Molecule, Naughty Dog, Pixel Opus, Polyphony, San Diego, Santa Monica, Sucker Punch, and Team Asobi. Support teams include Malaysia, San Mateo, and Valkyrie, as well as the port team Nixes. Megalithic team Bungie sits aside PlayStation Studios, working on multi-platform and cross-medium projects. Adam Razik wrote in and said, "Hello, Sacred Symbols, gentlemen. I find Sony's purchase of Haven Studios to be one of the most, if not the most, confusing studio acquisition I've ever seen. We've seen nothing from this AAA live service that they're making beyond vague concept art, and every time Raymond describes it, she uses bland, boring PR terminology that makes me less interested every time I read or hear about it. Why would PlayStation buy this studio when they haven't even proven themselves yet? Even with the reasons I can come up with, like probably got them for dirt cheap and they want the presence in the Canadian dev scene, the acquisition still comes across as questionable at best. I need the full Sacred Symbols breakdown on the story. Please, you guys are the best. And thank you for the extremely high quality content each week. Thank you, Adam." Dustin, let's go to you first on this one. What do you think of this? This breaks the mold as far as I'm concerned. I don't think... I mean, I think you can look at Nix's and a couple of others as already breaking the mold, but we're clearly out of the window where Sony is going to purchase only teams it has worked with in the past, which has always been its way. In fact, there was a story on gamesindustry.biz that talked a lot about that in an interview with Herman Holst and others, saying, you've always acted in this other way. Why are you acting like this now? So it's certainly different. What do you make about Haven joining first party?
I think it is different than previous purchases, but I wouldn't say that it's a confusing purchase at all. I think in particular, the main things that stick out to me is looking at, there's a gamesindustry.biz interview with both Jade Raymond and Herman Holst. And there's an entire section of that interview about why they're excited to have a location in Canada. Herman Holst said it is incredibly exciting for us to be there, but also to have people that are native to the area and know everything. I have already seen the caliber of people that Haven has been able to attract. We are finally in Canada. We're finally in Quebec. We've hit the ground running with a team that's deeply embedded in the area. So we've talked about in the past how important gathering talent is, and where better than that scene. There's so much talent there. And I think what's important also to remember about Jade Raymond, who's become really, I mean, of course, she's going to be one of the center points of this whole conversation as the head of the studio, but there's a lot of conversations like, well, she's not a creative. And that's true, but if you look at the games that she's executive produced or been the producer on, I mean, Assassin's Creed 2, I didn't know this, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. She's
there's
producer.
There's a lot of producers on that game. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what I remember the story about that, but it's not what it seems.
I would look at it more as somebody that's like can organize and bring the right people together to make projects, as the head of the studio. And so the other aspect of this is, so they get they get a location in the Canadian dev scene, very important. They also are probably spending way less now than they would later after a game release. And apparently Herman really likes what he sees. So they're looking at the risk of buying it now versus later and deciding, let's just go for it. And who knows, that may bite them later if the game ends up being bad. But I'm not like baffled by this decision. It's clear that they want the location, they want the talent, they can get in early, and they like what they see. So all of those things put in that order make sense to me. Is it different than previous? Definitely, no doubt. I mean, a lot of this conversation, and I'm wondering if a lot of this has spurned from our podcast talking about organic growth. Like I've seen this go out into other podcasts as well. Where
a lot of my sources tell me that they hear other podcasts basically saying what we have said like weeks later, which is funny.
Yeah, which sure, this doesn't apply in the organic growth that we talked about in the past, where it's like work on a few titles and then purchase when things make sense. But it's different than that. But it is still, I mean, they're organically growing their very own studio, which the whole argument that people are really getting to the weeds about, it's like, it's funny because I feel like it's been spurned on by this podcast, and I'm just kind of like, whatever. I mean, it's different now. Things have changed. Obviously, the landscape of studios and acquisitions is totally different. So, of course, it's going to change.
Even from a year ago, it's different. 2 years, like the ecosystem right now, and just like the industry is so different now than it was 5 years ago. Even, stands to reason things are going to change. But I think I agree with you. I think it makes sense that they would want to kind of be in Canada. It makes sense that they would want to get in early. And the thing with live service too is like it is a gamble, right? It's like you could end up with something that flops, but then you could end up with something that like imagine like imagine if somebody saw Fortnite save the world, right? And it was like, that sucks. We're going to buy it anyway. And then they own everything. And suddenly it's like, oh, suddenly Fortnite's the biggest thing and we have it because we jumped in when it was not looking so hot. And that's kind of like the gamble of live service. Even some of the strongest live service games that are around right now, Sea of Thieves, Destiny 2, like those games did not have particularly good launches, you know? Granted, there's like different relationships and different studios involved in those things, but like the reason stands, it's like these are games that have a lot of potential for growth. And I think if they like what they see now, it makes a decent amount of sense for them to just jump in now and, you know, and just see where that thing can eventually go. We don't see what the hell they see because they haven't been transparent about it. But you have to assume they know more than we do. You know, just basic. This is how the world works.
Well, and
so I'm not surprised by it necessarily.
Colin, I have a question for you. And I don't know, maybe this is just a case by case basis, but with them being a fully owned Sony team, does that open them up for a lot more collaboration with other Sony studios? Like,
yeah, that's what I said.
Trade secrets and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I had written in the article, because they did say that was one of their, or in our write up, because that's what they said, was that they can now gain this sort of access. But I think that that's kind of overstated, just because that access, for instance, we know that Housemarque helped Guerrilla complete Killzone, right? We found that out later. Like, they were not a first party team at that point. They were a very trusted second party team, but I don't know. I think that you hit on something key, which is that I think the situation has changed. So one of the things that we've talked about on the show a lot is, which has been brought up by sources and I think discussed pretty openly here, and we'll continue to beat this drum, is that there is a shortage of talent. And everyone is hiring and no one can seem to acquire the pertinent talent they need to produce these 100, 150, $200 million games that people are demanding now, that require teams of 1,000 people to make them over many years. And you need real talent. And I think by opening a hub in Canada, particularly in Quebec, I think Montreal is the hotbed of game development in Canada. I would say Vancouver is like secondary. I would say something like Toronto and surrounding burbs in Southern Ontario are tertiary. And so I think that there is something important to that, of saying like, we need to be able to tap into this market of very high caliber, mostly Ubisoft and WB centric, but others, EA talent, and do the work necessary to broach this place. We have plenty of American studios. We have plenty of European studios. We don't need more. Maybe we can use another Japanese team, but we don't really need anything else. We need something in Canada. And so, yeah, I think that's smart. And if the crunch on the amount of people that can be hired is true, and we think it is based on the $1 billion being rendered on Bungie just for retention bonuses, then I think that what they're doing is saying, like, let's just get in and just do this now. And we seem to have a good structure here. I don't think it's a coincidence that co-founder had left the studio a few weeks ago. That was probably either he wasn't wanted for this deal to happen, or he didn't want to be on the train as a first party, which could be possible too. A lot of people don't want to be in there, but I remain skeptical of Jade Raymond. I think she's a talented producer. I just don't know what she has particularly done. She seems flighty to me, if anything. And I think that we need people to kind of stay in place and know what they're going to deliver. So I'll be intrigued to see what she can put up, but she is not a creative. So I want to know more about the creatives that they're going to hire. And I think some people are a little confused just by the other two studios that were kind of coupled with Haven, which were Deviation and Firewalk. I think people were kind of wondering, why wouldn't you buy them instead? One of those guys, especially because a lot of them have Call of Duty talent and that like more shooter talent. But like you said, you guys both said that we don't really know what they're doing. So it could be something special, but I remain skeptical. There's no doubt it is an inorganic acquisition and that the rules have changed. And I think I started saying that when Nix's came in. Firesprite wasn't so much a rule breaker, but Nix's was. And certainly Bungie didn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense as just a company you want to own, but certainly not within the PlayStation Studios family. They're not a PlayStation studio. And then this. So I think that this, if anything, just opens up a broader horizon to acquisition. Like, I don't think there are any rules now. So we'll see what happens, but we'll keep an eye on this closely, and we're anxious to know more about what Haven is doing, but we're not going to know for a long time, I don't think. I would imagine they were just formed a year ago. I would imagine, so they pitched Sony and all of that. I would imagine
2024,
maybe at the very
earliest.
Yeah, that seems ambitious, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, number 2. Polish developer / publisher CD Projekt has officially announced its new Witcher game, though with scarce details. In a press release, the studio confirms the development of a new Witcher game for the first time. Alongside the announcement comes a single piece of art. The Witcher logo with a new saga begins underneath it, with a Lynx pendant over it, all laying in the snow. Importantly, the press release says, quote, no further details such as development timeframe or release date were provided, end quote. In a wise move, CD Projekt is moving off of its long-used proprietary engine called Red Engine, which it has used since 2011's The Witcher 2, and is instead embracing Epic-owned next-gen toolset Unreal Engine 5. This transfer in engine won't affect any existing CD Projekt games or future support for those games through Cyberpunk 2077, which still has expansions planned for it on the old technology. Founded in the mid-90s, CD Projekt came to industry-wide prominence with the release of its mega-hit RPG The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which came to PS4 in 2015. Its Witcher games span back to 2007 and are based on the fantasy book series by Andrzej Sapkowski. CD Projekt is also notably the owner of digital storefront Good Old Games, or they used to be called that. The team's last game, the contentious Cyberpunk 2077, was very well received on PC, but was disastrous on PlayStation 4, forcing Sony to remove it from the storefront for some half a year. And only 2 weeks following its release in 2020, and regardless of its technical state, it crossed more than $500 million in revenue, more than making up for its entire cost of development. So they're fine. Chris, let's start with you. What do you think? Just the acknowledgement of a new Witcher game. Seems like it's time. I feel like they might have wanted to do this earlier, but they really couldn't, considering the state Cyberpunk left them in and their lost reputation. But moving to Unreal Engine 5 is very exciting because it seems like it's going to be a very promising next gen or current gen tool set. So talk to me a little bit about your feelings here if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued. I think it's funny you say that I wish they could have done this earlier. I almost, part of it almost feels a little bit, not desperate. Like I don't think that's the word. I do think they're eager to move on from the Cyberpunk debacle, and I do think they're eager to just kind of like move forward. And I do think obviously Witcher is their obvious answer, and it's not like there wasn't going to be a Witcher game without this. I think it's a little funny that like only a couple weeks after Cyberpunk 2077 was patched in a way that was I guess mostly well received. Were they like, okay, Witcher time, Witcher, remember, we can still make good stuff. And it's like, all right, cool. That's fine. Like, I actually like Cyberpunk 2077 because obviously I played it on, I just got lucky. I got a good code, but I think the promise of a new Witcher game on that Unreal technology is exciting. Although it's got to be an interesting studio setup there where they're going to have an entire team kind of working with a new engine and an entire team working with an old engine simultaneously. It's got to be like a really interesting situation, like a really interesting setup there, because you're gonna have certain people who are like, I don't know how to do that.
Definitely, there's a few things that are interesting about that. First, they have to, like you said, bite the bullet and make that transition. This is something to a much lesser extent. I mean, that's what killed the original Telltale, as we always say, was they're just in insistence on just saying, no, we just gotta keep using the same old technology. I'm glad that they're moving away from the proprietary technology, and that comes at a cost, particularly 5% of your revenue. So that's something that they're willing to do. And Epic is part of this whole deal in talking about the game as well. So they're in on it. It's not an Epic Game Store exclusive for people looking on PC, which is important. I don't think they would do something like that. But
yeah, that's good.
But Dustin, what do you make about this Witcher coming back? I will say, always talk about Micah on the show. Some people may make fun of us, but she's a huge, because I only talk to Micah, so she's my only contact in the real world. And she's a huge Sapkowski fan. She's reading his book, the New Kingdom or something like that. But she's super amped just about this pendant and the suggestion that it creates a new house or something. And there's like some things that people are already figuring out about this. But I have to go back to The Witcher 3. And what I'm wondering is, are they ever going to make those first two games available on PlayStation? Because that would be pretty nice. In fact, the first game is, I don't think, even available on console at all. So right. I would like to go backwards rather before I go forward. But nonetheless, I'm curious what you think of with this Witcher project.
I think that the move to Unreal is in some ways a disappointing announcement, and I'll explain that in a second. But it's also a wise decision for them as a company, mainly because for all of its problems, Red Engine was able to deliver probably the best looking open world city we've ever seen in Cyberpunk. Maybe not necessarily the most thorough in its systems or in the places you can go within buildings or whatever, but no doubt when you see Cyberpunk running on, on 3080 or 3090 at 4K and high frame rate and HDR with ray tracing, it is incredible. It's one of the best looking games ever made. But
100%.
that came at an insane cost to them, clearly, in having to also make the game for last gen console, and also just the development. It kind of reminds me of hearing Bungie talk about Destiny 1, and they use their own engine as well, that the updates for that game were so slow because they were so shackled to how their engine worked that doing even minor changes was extremely difficult. And so eventually they were able to get that sorted out through Destiny 2, where now they're able to update much quicker. And I have to imagine that Red Engine is kind of a similar situation based on how we saw the rollout of Cyberpunk, just with it not doing so well on other consoles and how long it took them to fix stuff. And even then, there's still issues. And so it is the wise decision, clearly, to move on.
I agree.
It should be noted, though, like, you're right. Like, Cyberpunk looks incredible. It's arguably like the best running at max capacity.
Right.
That is definitely one of the best looking games I've ever seen. But there is also the case to be made that it's like we are comparing Cyberpunk 2077 to all of the efforts of the previous Unreal Engine. We haven't really seen Unreal 5.
That's a great point
yet. So it's possible that CD Projekt Red looks at Unreal and be like, well, this does everything Red Engine does, and it's a lot more handy. It's a lot more flexible, and we can get things out much quicker because it's such a streamlined engine, thanks to all the years of, collaborative work that Epic have done. I have to imagine that conversation was had, because you're definitely right that Red Engine's potential was really high, but the flexibility of that engine clearly had issues.
Right.
And I have to imagine we're going to see PS5 Pro at some point, and we're going to see Xbox Series
XX
imaginary number. I don't know what the hell it's a weird naming convention they locked themselves into, but you have to imagine that like flexibility is going to be very, very important moving forward. And if Red Engine can't facilitate that, and Unreal can, while looking as good as a lot of these Unreal Engine games do, based on like what we're seeing, like Forspoken is Unreal, right?
Yes.
That looks insane. Like Forspoken.
Oh, you know what? No, Forspoken's not Unreal. Forspoken
That's
is
their
on
weird
Square Enix's engine.
Yeah, their weird Final Fantasy 15 engine.
Wait, what's that? What's
Luminous,
that Unreal Engine game?
Luminous.
Luminous Engine. Yeah, no, it's a Luminous game.
What the hell is that Unreal Engine game that they showed that looked almost exact? Whatever. The point is,
I know what you're talking about.
I think we haven't had a chance to see the new Unreal Engine in actual action yet, and I'm curious as to whether or not.
Yeah, are you talking about the Lumen in the land of Nanite? That was the
that tech demo.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like I was gonna remember that.
Yeah. Of course, that's what you're talking about. So I think every publisher of size should have its own engine, because this not only gives them an option to avoid licensing fees, which are substantial, but also to potentially sell or use their engine. I mean, this was the entire idea. Most don't do that, but Crytek was a company that tried to do that. Remember, with CryEngine, while also having Crytek games, while also publishing their own games and all of this. It doesn't necessarily work. That was also what Amazon was trying to do with Lumberyard, which didn't really work out for them either. They were trying to make an engine to build games on.
Right.
And of course, Sony attracted Kojima with their own proprietary technology and Guerrilla's Decima engine. But my idea here is that I just don't think CD Projekt is what they thought that they were, which is they're not a publisher. They're a developer. Now, they might self-publish their own games, but that's common. We publish our own games too. We're not a publisher of games. And I think with that in mind, it's better for them to bite the bullet, pay the fees, and then have a full support suite and backing of a company that's going to help you do everything. Because they, to the point you both made, ran into a buzzsaw with Cyberpunk. They were not prepared. And here's the thing that I don't think people realize is that when you have Red Engine and something doesn't work, it's like, well, okay, what are we supposed to do about it? But if something doesn't work with Epic's Unreal, you have the forums, you have the helpline, you're paying for this. Like they'll help you. They'll get into the nitty gritty. They probably also have protocols and all of these different things for QA and how different things work and how different things are massaged. They basically have digital sockets for middleware that works really natively and well with what they do. If you want to use things like animation software and rendering software and all the different things. And I just think they have to eventually bite the bullet and realize we aren't a sizable enough institution to have Frostbite or to have Decima or to have something like that. We need to have someone else that does it better than us do that. And I think it's a smart play. It's a play that means that they'll make less money, but I think ultimately they'll make more, and they're going to spend less on development because they don't have to jump through all these hoops anymore.
And they weren't selling Red Engine anyway.
No,
really. That's
right.
That's kind of the risk that you get into as well when you make your own engine, much like Amazon learned with Lumberyard and countless other engines as well. Crytek is even in that spot now. It's like, who the hell's using Crytek right now?
No one. I think only a few VR games use CryEngine at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And you have like a situation where like, you can build your own proprietary engine and you can have your team that's like really proficient with it. And maybe you could make money licensing out for a while, but eventually like an engine is going to eventually like one engine is going to be like the primary one that people use, and eventually people are going to just flock to that one because it's the same reason why YouTube is like the most popular like video sharing sites, because like that's where everybody is, it's like that's where the most people are. That's where I'm going to go to do my video stuff. And if I have a huge helpline with this engine that everybody else is using in Unreal, why the fuck wouldn't I do that? And then suddenly you're stuck with an engine that nobody knows how to use except you guys.
Right.
And it's like, it's there's risks and rewards to these types of things. And I think this is a smart play on CD Projekt's hand.
I'll give you an anecdote, although it has nothing to do with development, but it has to do actually with development of software, which is IGN. IGN used to run on proprietary software called Network in a Box. It was something that was literally made up by us in the 90s. And we had like a few engineers that knew how to use it. And the site until I think 2012 or 2013 literally ran on this thing. And you'd log in and it was just this entire mess. And there were like a few guys. One of the guys' name was Frank and a few other guys that like literally knew how it worked. And when they slowly left, everyone was like, we have no idea how the back end works and we can't do anything with the site anymore. And eventually we had to bite the bullet and go to WordPress, which is like what everyone uses, a different CMS, and migrate everything over in order to do what we needed to do. But to do that, there was an intense amount of pain, an intense, not physical, of course, maybe some, but there was an intense amount of migration of data, knowledge that was lost forever and not needed, and all of this. And the way that they described it, I remember, was saying like, if you have a rubber band ball with rubber bands all around it, getting rid of like, for us, Network in a Box without replacing it with something would be like somehow undoing the rubber bands in the center and then assuming everything is just going to stay the same and everything's just going to unravel from that point. So the sooner you pull the Band-Aid, it's only kind of similar, but when we renamed the company from Colin's Last Stand to Last Stand Media, we did that because we were like, we should just do it now. Like the more we wait, the why wait? Just got to get it over with. And so, yeah, I agree. I think this is a smart move. I don't think we see this game till 2025 at the earliest. I think that's probably even pushing it. And I think they are going to be very cautious about this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, this thing isn't coming out until it is shiny and sheen. In fact, they'd be stupid to release the game in any condition other than that if they want to regain the respect of people. And I think they will, because The Witcher 3 was a game changer for that studio. And I think coming out in the shadow of Fallout 4 later that year, Fallout 4 looked underwhelming, and I wonder if it's going to happen the same way with Elder Scrolls. We'll see what happens. Because very quietly over there in CD Projekt, they have very, very high potential. We wish them the best. Number 3, the fall 2022 delays have already begun. According to a brief tweet from Sefton Hill, longtime creative director at WB-owned studio Rocksteady, eagerly anticipated DC game Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed. It will no longer come out towards the end of the year and will instead launch sometime in the spring of 2023. This news comes as a disappointment, as it seemed this year was going to be the year Rocksteady would finally break its release lull. The studio, renowned for its work with Batman beginning in 2009 with PlayStation 3's Arkham Asylum, hasn't put out a full game in a staggering 7 years. Arkham Knight came to PlayStation 4 in 2015. It will thus be 8 years by the time this game launches, begging the question just what's going on over there. That said, there's little doubt the current gen-only game will be great when it finally comes to PlayStation 5, and it's worth noting that from a third-party perspective, it was Rocksteady's aforementioned Arkham Knight that acted as one of the console's first showcases from third party. Assuming the game really makes its spring 2023 timeframe, it will have been nearly 3 years since the game's reveal and release. Trevor Myers writes in and says, "Hey CDC, the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League has been delayed to spring of 2023. Do you think this was a good move by Rocksteady to get it out of this already crowded year? And do you think this trend will continue with other games as the year goes on? For me, this delay hurts after how good the gameplay trailer was, but it's worth the wait if it irons out bugs that so many games suffer with that launch these days." Chris, I'm curious what you make of this. I am a little befuddled by what the fuck is going on at Rocksteady. I will say this. I think the game is going to be great. I don't think anyone can possibly deny it. It's exciting that it is a current gen only game. I want to see what they can do. I think it's going to be really interesting. That said, there is no way, zero chance that when this game comes out, you would have looked at it and said, oh yeah, 7 or 8 years. Yeah, we can see that. I just don't believe it. And people are pointing out, and I think rightfully so, it's like, do you realize that since you released Arkham Knight, that Naughty Dog has released like Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2, and they're probably going to get factions out in that time and be well on their way to their next game, and there's high quality shit happening all over the place. What is going on here? It's very weird. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I think what we've seen from this game looks cool, and it looks impressive, and it looks, enticing, but it definitely doesn't look like 8 years. Like you look at something like Hogwarts Legacy, and you when we saw that a week ago, I was like, that looks like it took a while. Like I look at that game and I'm like, okay, that looks like a lot of time was spent, and I get it. Like I can see the development time in that game. It looks massive. It looks way bigger than what we thought. What we've seen of Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League doesn't look nearly as, I don't want to say nearly as impressive, because we're looking at two different things, but definitely doesn't look like something that took 8 years to make. And maybe there was something about this, maybe that it was originally being developed for, the last gen, and maybe at some point they made the decision to switch and make it exclusive to the next gen, and maybe that was like a whole rework that needed to be done. Maybe there was some engine things that needed to be done on the back end to kind of make it work that way. I really don't know. It's all speculative at this point, but I will never be anti-delay, as long as the delay facilitates a better launch, and that's typically the case. Like I can't think of a game that suffered from a delay. Even games like you think of like games that were stuck in development hell, like Duke Nukem Forever. It's like launching that game 5 years earlier wasn't going to make it better.
Right.
Like
it is interesting.
So,
God, that game. It is interesting though that, and people have wrote in about this, although I don't think I used any of their inquiries, but I'm channeling you guys, which is to say, you say that and you're right. Like, how can a delay make a game any worse? But are delays making games better? And I think it's kind of an interesting question, because people are saying like, well, games, look at Halo. Not to pick on that game, but Halo is delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, and then it still came out. And I don't mean to just pick on that game. It's just what came to mind. But I think people are saying like games are still fucked. They're not coming out shiny anymore. And it's like, it almost makes you wonder like how much more and so in other words, I look at it the other way, where I'm like, this game comes out and it's kind of fucked. How much more fucked would it have been if you released it on time?
That's what I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking when Halo launched. I was like, all right, this is fun and everything, it works, but like Forge isn't ready, custom games don't work. If they launched this game a year ago, like what the hell were they planning to launch? Like what the, like I don't know. It seems insane that they would have had anything functional. But I think that question is just kind of a different wording of the same thing, because ultimately if something releasing early would be more fucked, it would be better to release it late. It's ultimately the same question. It's just, the lens by which the question is being asked is just like a different perspective. I do think, look, this game is going to be better served by a delay. Whether or not it will be good when it comes out, that's, or functional when it comes out, that's That's a big question, but no way is it going to be better if they just forced it out. There's just no way.
I agree.
It's just never been the case
I agree.
ever. So I feel like, I'm looking forward to this game. I think what we've seen from it looks cool. I'm optimistic about it. Rocksteady has, in my opinion, never really made a bad game. Like, I know people are down on Arkham Knight for a variety of reasons. I'm sure I didn't like the Batmobile stuff, and I know the PC version was like a complete train wreck, but I enjoyed Arkham Knight, and I enjoyed Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, and I have no reason to assume I'm not going to enjoy this, especially because I just find the Suicide Squad interesting. But it's up in the air, man. At this point, I almost feel bad saying this, but no developer has earned your goodwill, really.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's very, especially now, where you just got to be really cautious, because sometimes a game comes out and you'd assume after delay after delay, after decent track record after decent track record, you're like, and something comes out and it's fucked. You're like, what the hell? What happened? Out of nowhere. So you got to be cautious about this stuff, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm a little disappointed because this is one of my 2022 drafts, so I'm a little.
Oh yeah, oh man. So yeah, you're losing on that one.
So
that's why we selected 12.
Out on that one.
But it's funny you say this, because Philip wrote into us on Patreon and says, with Rocksteady delaying the upcoming Suicide Squad game, do we need to start lowering expectations? I know the old adage is that delays are good, and while I agree that it seems that the most recent games that have been in development hell still tend to come out in rough shape, even after multiple delays, like Cyberpunk and Dying Light 2. I agree with the sentiment you shared, Chris, and the sentiment that Philip is sharing here, which is, why get excited really about much of anything at this point? And I don't mean that in this nihilistic state of mind. It's like, there are so many games coming out all the time. There's a back catalog and a backlog of games that we all have that is mountainous. And we should be in a more, like my brother Dagan always says, cross your arms and be like, prove it. Right. And
yeah.
Instead, we embrace these games with open arms. And the reason that I'm more embracing of them, like I said, I bought Sight Unseen. I've already bought Ghostwire Tokyo, is because it's my job to play PlayStation games. I'm going to do that. But if I were a consumer, I'd be very comfortable, I think, just being like, I don't know, man, I'm going to wait. Games become cheaper. You guys that play them early are paying the most for them. You're basically beta testing the game. The patches are going to make the games more stable and better long term. There's almost no reason, if you have the patience, there's almost no reason not to wait, specifically with single player experiences, where Dying Light 2, and I hate to say this because, first of all, there's going to be a Last Stand Easter egg in Dying Light 2. Head, the senior programmer there, is a listener of the show and a friend of mine. So I don't mean to insult the team, and I'm not. It's just it's unacceptable that game still has broken quest structure, that the game's trophies are still fucked, and all this. What is that all about? What is that? You can't do that. And I am worried about this lack of quality, not from the end product, but the product as it is sold. They're different. That's again why reviews are so dumb at the end of the day, and why I'm confounded that people just hand money over to these companies, when really you could bludgeon these companies into submission if you were just disciplined. If we were just disciplined as consumers, which we're not. And I've said that over and over again. We're not. We have the least discipline of all consumer groups. There are book boycotts and publisher boycotts in reading and shit like that all the time. Film studios get called out at the mat for doing certain shit overseas. There's all this stuff. But when it comes to gaming, EA will win the consumer sold worst company in the world, while FIFA sells 25 million copies. That just doesn't compute. And they don't give a fuck if they win that contest, as long as they get your money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, there are similar kind of things happening in the film industry, specifically with people make fun of the gratuitous amount of CGI used in the new Spider-Man movie, and it's a lot of it does look really bad until you realize the reason is oh well, digital artists aren't unionized in the same way that practical workshops are, and it's it's a lot easier to kind of ring those two. We saw it with the Sonic movie, actually, literally. We saw it when Sonic's redesign, when everybody was he looks like a fucking creepy furry Keebler elf, and they had to spend millions and millions of dollars on that studio to redo his design, and then they shut him down before the movie launched. And it's well, that's pretty fucked.
Yeah, I agree.
But like that movie's celebrated, and it's got a sequel now, and everybody's like, oh man, I can't wait to see Sonic. And it's like, yeah.
They really got
Cool.
people with that very wise movie poster that is an ode to Sonic 2's box art.
It's pretty good.
It's a good. It's a good.
It is.
poster.
It's excellent.
Excellent. I would if I saw Sonic on the street begging, I would laugh and leave. But that's a good poster. That's a really solid.
I agree.
Poster.
I totally agree. I would kick him on the way, even after he was begging, bleeding on the street. Dustin, what do you what do you have to say about this?
So I want to say this as respectfully as possible because I love the Batman Arkham games. I think all three of them are excellent. But the thing about Rocksteady, looking at their list of games, they had one game that they made before the Batman trilogy. It's a game called Urban Chaos Riot Response. I don't know anything about this game, but apparently, based on the reviews and what I can see on Metacritic, or not on Metacritic, on Wikipedia, not so hot. So I respectfully say that Rocksteady is a one-trick pony. And it's a really fucking good trick because those three games are excellent. Arguably, though, in the eyes of some fans of the series, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but I have heard it commonly thought that each game is, while they expand their scope, many people thought Asylum was the best one.
Definitely.
City may be a bit of a downgrade. And then Night, obviously, very contentious on how people felt about the even bigger expansion and the implementation of the Batmobile. And so now you have this studio that has risen to fame through doing one type of game. And when they've expanded it, it's been arguably questionable. Not to everybody. Again, I'm just putting it out as a point of thought.
No, yeah, you're right.
Now they're doing something, while it's in the same universe as Batman, completely different. Just based on the trailer, you can see there's like shooting and like it's totally different. Sure, it's third person action, but it's not like being Batman. And so
right,
surely this game, I mean, in 8 years went through at least one reset, probably more than that. And so yeah, I think that what we're seeing looks extremely promising. I think that trailer looks incredible. You guys got to watch it. For the viewers out there, if you haven't watched it outside of that initial stream, the initial stream was 30 FPS and had a bunch of, artifacts from being streamed. But if you watch that thing in 4K, 60 or whatever, it looks so good. And so while I remain optimistic about this game, I'm cautious because Rocksteady has to prove themselves outside of their traditional formula that made them.
You're right.
I'm half right.
I do think I think they have a better track record than something like CD Projekt Red, though, where CD Projekt Red had like The Witcher 2, which is like the Witcher 2 people liked, but Witcher 3 was really the only like breakout thing they made, and they're going back to The Witcher. So like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think Rocksteady's a bit more of a competent developer. I do think they branch out a little bit more, and even though City and Night were mixed in their reception, I do think, I don't know, in my opinion, as open world Batman games, those are really fucking good.
Yeah.
Like that's as good as you can get it. And there were plenty of Batman games before Rocksteady that were, guys, do me a favor and play any Batman game before Rocksteady and tell me how you feel about it.
One exception is the NES Sunsoft side scroller, which is
you gotta go back to like, you got to go back to literal arcade games to find like good ones.
Right.
It's like,
I would say my argument isn't about that. Like I said, all three of those Arkham games I think are excellent. And in fact, I think that Asylum and City are like both absolutely incredible. Some of the best games of that generation. I just want to say that when you look at a company that had done the same thing from 2009 to 2015 and even some time before that, since there was time for development Asylum, and now they're doing something totally different, and they don't have a track record to look at before. There's a reason that explains why when you do a completely different game, things got lost in the mix and reset multiple times.
That's fair.
We have a question here from Sean McDaniel. He says, "Hey guys, hope you are doing well. With the announcement that Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League has been delayed until 2023, this brings a question to my mind yet again. Why are publishers insistent to announce a release date that they are more than likely knowing that they are not going to be able to make? It seems like this happens more often than not these days. Hope you guys take it easy." This is something that Chris often talks about, and I think that it's done as cynically. I think it's done for cynical reasons. For instance, I think publishers, even WB is the publisher of this game. WB is the publisher of Hogwarts Legacy, which we're talking a lot about, and we're going to talk about during the listener questions at the end of the show. And I think what they've realized is, and I've certainly noticed it, these things don't all happen in a vacuum, is that they've explicitly not said the date for this game at the end of this year. And if they had a date in mind, they would. And I think it's because they're not quite certain and they want to do this, but they have to hit their milestones and kind of get the green light. And I think, again, it goes back to getting your pre-orders. You'll pre-order, you'll give them your money sight unseen. The second that game pops up on PlayStation Network, you're giving them the money directly. They're getting it. And they have space and time to operate. No one holds them to these dates, and it's not necessarily important either. But I agree. I wish people would hold things a little closer to the vest. That's what tells me that maybe this game is not where clearly the game is not where they want it to be. And is it a cause for concern? I don't know. I doubt it, but we'll find out. What do you think of that, Dustin?
I was thinking, I'm trying to remember. I was looking it up to try to get the info, and I can't quite find it. But wasn't there a thing that Arkham Knight was announced with a date, and then very shortly after they delayed it again? Like it seemed obvious that they probably intentionally knew.
Yeah.
There's something there, back in 2014, 2015 where that happened. So I think that, I don't know, dates, people get excited by dates. It's we talk about dates when they get announced on this show. So it's like, from a developer standpoint, maybe it's like, yeah, we should put out a date because that's a nice little marketing boost. And if we decide to delay it, then that's a second marketing boost because we'll talk about it on the show. And so will tons of other podcasts. So
Arkham Knight was supposed to come out in late 2014 and was delayed in June of 2014 for 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I feel like I understand the reasoning behind it, but it's getting to the point now where I just don't trust dates. Like when a company's like, oh, this game's coming out on July 10th, 2023. I'm like, oh, cool. So it's not. Like, that's my immediate assumption when I see a date. And I'm usually very right. And I would like that not to be the case. I would like to see a release date like shown to me and have something actually hit it. That would be like a really cool. I think that'd be really neat. I can't imagine that world where that would happen. But, it would be nice.
It would be nice. I also think what would be nice is if there was a better marriage of timing and money and marketing and all of this to make these things just a little more symbiotic and reasonable. Like, don't get people excited for something that's not coming. Don't promise something you can't deliver. Only show something you can deliver, and only promise something when you're positive you can deliver it. I don't... This just seems so basic, but there are more things behind the scenes, and a lot of it is, I don't want to say sinister, but it's underhanded. A lot of it is to try to get your money early. A lot of it is to try to get that buzz, to hurt your competitors, to occupy a date that scares your competitors off, damn well knowing you're not going to go to that date and then leaving it. You know, like that kind of shit happens. It happens. It does.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And that's why it's always so fascinating to hear like who's announcing what. And when I keep saying with Call of Duty not going next year, it's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I can't wait to see what that fall looks like now and how people are going to operate. And I'm sure that Activision would have loved to have kept that under their hat for as long as possible, but they just weren't able to do that for strategy reasons. So we'll see. I have a lot of promise in this. Sefton Hill is really talented. He's always been really nice to me too. So I remember that as well. And Arkham Knight was, what I remember about Arkham Knight, I beat it, was I really liked the side quests a lot, but I didn't like the Batmobile stuff, which is everyone knows. I remember, again, I've said before, I think the Firefly, the guy going from firehouse to firehouse and you're chasing him, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I thought the Joker stuff in that game was awesome.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was like the big spoiler at the time, was that he was in it.
Yeah. You've had time.
I'm not playing that game. Like, it was 7 years ago, literally to the month.
Yeah, like, fuck off. Quite frankly.
Number 4, in a piece of tantalizing news that has gone shockingly underreported, the National Football League, the biggest revenue-generating sports league in the world, has revealed that NFL football in some way, shape, or form is coming to PlayStation VR. Word comes by way of a press release from the NFL and a company called Status Pro. quote, a sports technology and gaming company that uses real-time player data to create authentic extended reality experiences, announced today a partnership to bring an NFL licensed VR simulation gaming title to fans globally, end quote. The title, slated for PSVR with no word on PSVR 2 functionality, will allow players, quote, to play like a professional football player through a first-person 3D immersive experience, end quote. When taken into consideration the NFL's stranglehold over American culture and the perennial success of Electronic Arts' Madden franchise, the promise of a PSVR simulation football game licensed by the NFL, even if it's poorly executed, is substantial. You may recall that about 2 years ago, the NFL declined to re-up its long-running exclusive contract with Madden, which Madden itself predated by some 15 seasons. There was a time, many of us remember, when there were multiple licensed NFL games, and that era is returning. 2K at the time revealed that it would be working on its own NFL projects, perhaps in time for 2021, though that didn't happen, as we've heard a little else since. Still, this is merely the next non-EA foray into a future of football games outside of Madden. So in short, a PSVR Madden game, PSVR American football game. I won't throw it over to you guys. I know you don't care, but it's something worth noting. I will say this. This is funny. I reached out to the PR people about it, seeing if they wanted to come on and talk, and they were like weirdly curt and rude to me. Oh,
really?
So this is going to be the first and last time your shit is mentioned on this show. Thank you for playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say, like, I can't even imagine like a VR. The first thing I thought of was just some guy in a headset tackling his TV because he didn't understand. Like, I just don't, whatever. I guess this is a thing.
Like, it was. I put it on Discord. You guys can go check it out. I obviously blurred out the PR person's name, but. Where I just did my opening shtick, and then they were almost like, oh, like the response was almost a little passive aggressive, where it was like, oh, we're most media is waiting to hear more and blah blah blah, almost like telling me that I'm like don't know what I'm doing, and then I respond back being like, oh, just trying to be polite, being like, oh, when I was at IGN, I would have definitely been happy to do this at there, really indicating that I wanted to do a conversation like an interview, and then she responded back. They already did. That was it. That was the email. Like as the IGN covered it, and then so I just responded, "Okay." In the email, it was a strange encounter with a PR person that probably didn't know who I was nice to me in the beginning, and then Googled my name, and
yeah, probably
found out that she's not supposed to like me. Anyway, I guess your game won't be appearing on the PlayStation podcast called Sacred Symbols anymore. But we have to acknowledge every game once. That is our rule. Number 5. Ghostbusters is getting a new video game, and it's coming from a trusted source. The new game is called Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. It's under development at one-time Sony second-party partner IllFonic, and it's due out in late 2022. In its introductory press release, Spirits Unleashed is described as a, quote, 4v1 hunt or haunt supernaturally charged video game from the asymmetrical multiplayer experts at IllFonic, end quote. Naturally, players will have the option to play as the Ghostbusters or the Ghosts, and perhaps most interestingly, both Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd lend their voices and characterizations to the game. Spirits Unleashed is slated for both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and it's the first console Ghostbusters game in more than 5 years. In 2016, Activision published the horrific Fireforge-developed twin-stick shooter simply called Ghostbusters, and before that, the last Ghostbusters game was another twin-stick shooter, the somewhat better Sanctum of Slime on PlayStation 3, which launched by way of defunct studio Behavior in 2011. Behavior, of course, if I remember correctly, did the mighty Naughty Bear, which I loved. The last beloved Ghostbusters game was, of course, 2009's Ghostbusters, the video game on PS3, which was developed by Terminal Reality and published by Atari, and is widely considered to be as close as we'll ever get to a third film with the original cast. As for IllFonic, the team is perhaps best known for the 2017 asymmetrical horror game Friday the 13th, which is on PS4 and is still supported to this day. The team also released Predator Hunting Grounds on PS4 with Sony as publisher in 2020 and launched the softly received multiplayer shooter Arcadegeddon on PS5 last year. Chris, let's go to you first. How do you feel about this? Does an asymmetrical Ghostbusters game from IllFonic suit your desires?
It sounds cool. I think the idea of Ghostbusters and asymmetric multiplayer work really well together. I think that's like a really clever union of ideas and IP. But maybe this is just me. I feel like Ghostbusters is a tad...
Say it.
It's a bit out of date, to say the least. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like Ghostbusters is one of those things that, like, that is a lightning in a bottle movie, right? Where that movie, that's a great movie. That's a fun movie. Like, I really enjoyed the original Ghostbusters. But even with the cast coming back for that second movie, that was like not, that was, there's a lot of nostalgia for Ghostbusters 2, but that was like not, that wasn't a fantastic outing at the theater in my opinion. And with the 2016 reboot and like the even the new one with Paul Rudd and those kids, I'm looking at it, I'm like, do people really want Ghostbusters still? Like, I don't know.
The answer is yes, sadly.
I don't know. I feel like as an IP, I feel like it's a bit rough, and and maybe this is unfair, but I feel like Predator Hunting Grounds was a tad, it was moderately okay at best. Like, I played a little bit of it and it was just like, yeah, this is fine. I'm starting to get really sad at the idea that like maybe people just don't want asymmetric multiplayer, which sucks because I really like it. I really think it's like one of the most fun aspects of it. Like, Left 4 Dead multiplayer was so fun for that reason. It was just the asymmetry of it was so neat, and even Splinter Cell with its Spies versus Merc multiplayer was just like one of my favorite experiences. But these don't really catch on fire the way they used to, and maybe Ghostbusters is the right IP for this, because again, I think it is an appropriate mix of IP and genre. I just wonder how much this genre coupled with this dated IP will really, I wonder if it'll matter to people. I would love for it. I would love for it too, but I'm a little skeptical.
By the way, before I kick it over to you, Dustin, I just want to say I totally agree about your assessment of Ghostbusters. I did an episode of Knockback, which is my retro and nostalgia podcast through Last Stand that I do with my brother each week, about Ghostbusters some months ago, and we discussed that, where I sat down and really watched it for the first time in a long time, front to back. Just watched it, and I'm like, I don't think this is very good. Like, I don't like. I think it's a good. I don't want to say that. I think it's a good movie, but very similar to the way I feel about things like Back to the Future. I'm like, what? Why do we care about this still? There are so many better IP than this from this era. Nonetheless, science fiction and ghosts and all this kind of stuff. And I like Ghostbusters for its comedic timing and all of that, but I was, if anything, watching it again recently reaffirmed in me, I'm like, I don't really like Ghostbusters. And I've always kind of been befuddled by its persistence based on 2 movies and a pretty well-liked cartoon series, The Real Ghostbusters. And then you have this third game from Atari, like the third movie that was basically like his and I know a lot of Ghostbusters fans really, that's what they considered canon, I think. And a lot of Ghostbusters fans really like that game, but I am also confused why we want to continue to go back to this franchise. Irrespective, by the way, of the girl movie that no one liked and the Paul Rudd movie that more people liked. It's like, irrespective of that. I'm sorry.
That's not true, Colin.
Oh, what?
People love that movie. The new Ghostbusters.
No, that's what I said. I thought that people did like it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said they didn't like it.
No, I said that I think they said, I don't remember what I said, but it's something like they liked more. No, I know that they.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, go ahead. You have something to say.
Well, I want to clarify, because I said, I was like, unfortunately, they want more Ghostbusters. I'm specifically referring to that.
Are you afraid of Ghostbusters fans?
Yes, because I publicly stated that I thought that the new movie was terrible. And I'm very clearly in the minority on that. People love Paul Rudd walking into Walmart to buy some Baskin Robbins ice cream when all the shit goes down in the climax of the movie. Very cool. But beside that,
wow. Right. Get it out.
It's a terrible movie, by the way. You can direct your fury onto me.
It's not good. Anyway,
it's fine.
I want to be clear though, so I don't need more serious Ghostbusters movies. I really like the first one a lot. I've always thought that it, like you, Colin, I thought that was a little bigger than I'm always surprised by the fandom, but I do think that original movie is excellent. One of the best 80s comedy fun movies, whatever. So with that being said, I don't want more Ghostbusters movies, but I think this game sounds fucking awesome, actually, in that clearly from this trailer, it reminds me a lot of the ghost hunting PC game that I played recently. Hunting PC game. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Phasmophobia. That's it. It reminds me of a fun, less scary version of Phasmophobia. I love this idea of somebody has the PKE meter, someone's got the gun, and someone's got to set the trap, and you got to work together. You got to find the ghost first. That all sounds really, really fun, and I love the idea of that. And they showed something about having someone being able to play as the ghost, which if you pull that off, right, then maybe you have a bit of a, I don't want to say like Left 4 Dead because it's clearly different, but I like the idea of one person being the ghost and then 4 people going and trying to hunt them down.
It's a little bit like Evolve.
Right. Yeah. So this feels like a perfect thing for that IP, that it's like, okay, we've got this 80s, this fun 80s movie that's about hunting ghosts in all these wacky ways. What if we made a game out of that? You know, that sounds cool to me. And it's clearly there's some groundwork with Phasmophobia that they can look at. So I'm excited to see what this is. No doubt. I think, like I said, perfect pairing. But outside of that, I don't need any more Ghostbusters. But a fun game, asymmetric game, cool.
Right on.
I don't know why you had to drag Back to the Future like that, Colin, like a psycho.
Yeah, that was a bit.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to rough you guys up.
Back to the Future is one. I don't want more of it, but like that's those boards don't work on water unless you got power. It's so dumb. I love Back.
There's just a few series from the 80s that I feel that way about. Like I've always been mystified about. It was Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, and Karate Kid is another one. Where like I remember we did Karate Kid as well on Knockback a long time ago, where I was like, Daniel's the bad guy in this. Does no one realize that Daniel's the bad guy in this?
Isn't that the point of Cobra Kai though?
Yes, which as I understand, my brother, like I think, and my brother loves Karate Kid and he loves that stuff. But I'm just saying I'm a little offbeat with the 80s stuff, which is weird because I love the 80s. But by the way, the Ghostbusters episode of Knockback is number 193. If you guys want to go look at it or listen to it, rather, October 2021, you could watch it as well. Okay, number 6. No, Babylon's Fall won't die. At least this is the claim from developer Platinum Games and publisher Square Enix, which wrote the following in part on its social feeds. Quote, is the continuing service in danger? No. There are no plans to reduce the scale of development on Babylon's Fall. Content up to the end of Season 2 is now practically complete, and we have started work on Season 3 and beyond. We will continue to provide new content for the game and make improvements based on player feedback, striving to keep existing players playing and to attract newcomers, end quote. Alongside this message came a link to a patch list with a huge slew of updates. The game certainly is changing and dynamically moving, although it's still highly unlikely to ultimately survive in such a competitive multiplayer marketplace. Babylon's Fall, which has had a disastrous critical and commercial reception, comes from the aforementioned Platinum Games, which is best known for the likes of Bayonetta and even collaborated with Square Enix on the smash hit RPG Nier Automata, which came to PS4 in 2017. However, Platinum is also known for its duds, of which there are quite a few, from The Legend of Korra to Star Fox Zero. These days, it seems somewhat desperate to stay alive, publicly clamoring for the revival of its canceled Xbox-exclusive Scalebound, kickstarting ports for games like The Wonderful 101, and even announcing publicly that it's open to the idea of acquisition. Dustin, Babylon's Fall, I feel like, what else are they going to say? I just don't know if they're going to try to turn this thing around. Do you think it has the opportunity to turn around?
You know, we've seen crazy turnaround success stories, so it's certainly possible. But I think that it would also have to come with major marketing as well, because I just don't think this game is in any way part of the conversation outside of stuff like this, where people are talking about it dying, which doesn't really incline people to go invest their money into a platform that seems like it's dying. I got to be honest, though. The more I hear about this game, I'm almost, I don't want to say I'm getting tired of, but it's like we're always talking about it in hypotheticals, but 3 of us haven't played it. I almost want to check this game out at this point just to see. I might have to give this a go, because who knows? Maybe with the updates, maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
And as I'm not a major Platinum fan, but Platinum has made one of my favorite games of all time in Nier Automata. So, maybe I'm willing to take the plunge. Is it $60? I'm guessing if it's still 60, maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be on Game Pass.
Well, right now it's a PlayStation exclusive, or console exclusive, which is interesting.
Ooh.
Yeah, right now. At some point though,
$60.
You can check it
out.
Well,
Godfall just migrated, and others are doing the same. I'm wondering what you think, Chris, of the possibility of Babylon's Fall surviving, because I like Dustin's optimism in saying like you can never really know games survive, but I think there's a 0% chance this game survives. It's just how there's just too many other games, and even I look at games like BioWare with Anthem, and if they couldn't BioWare, everyone loves BioWare or loved them. If they couldn't salvage goodwill and like get people on board, then Platinum has, I don't think no chance. This game reminds me more of a Battleborn situation where I'm like, there's no way. I just can't imagine this working. I would love to be wrong because I don't want them to be in trouble, but they seem to be in existential trouble. And I don't know how this all fits into that, but I'm curious what you think.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine like a No Man's Sky type comeback for this. I don't know anybody who was like, cause at least No Man's Sky, like, you know, they didn't have like a huge track record as Hello Games. They didn't, you know, they weren't working on some IP that everybody loves. They weren't like this beloved industry darling, but they had a lot of hype. And Babylon's Fall doesn't even have that. Like like nobody that I saw leading up to the launch was excited about it. Nobody was like really ecstatic about it coming out. I will say though, you know, they've got the first 2 seasons worth of content done. They're working on season 3. That's for a bad game. So, yeah, maybe 343. Maybe look at them. Maybe copy them a little bit. You know? at least they get their content done.
You know? Right. I mean, here's the thing with this game is just another cautionary tale of don't chase games that you don't know how to make. And stay in your lane a little bit. If you want to explore and experiment, do it a little more slowly and a little more subtly. You have a lot of audacity. It's the same thing with BioWare. It's like you have a little bit of audacity thinking you know how to do this. You don't. It would be like Bungie. I would be surprised if Bungie could make a really compelling single-player 10-hour shooter campaign because their whole thing is different, right? Like they make loot and they have the story and the lore, but they have the gameplay with friends and they have all these different things that they know how to do. And I don't know if they would have the audacity to be like, well, we know how to do this better than id. And I think if you want to prepare, if you want to compete in the A and AAA space, it's no chicanery allowed. And I just think that they're out of their depth, and I worry about their survival, especially with what you said, Dustin, with the near connection and the other connections too. There was a time when Platinum was one of the biggest and most respected studios in gaming during the Mad World, Bayonetta, Vanquish, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, but it started to fall apart for them a little bit. I think they're spread out too much. They have to decide what they are. And they either, like, you can tell they take money projects and then they do the projects that they want to do. And that's tough.
Who's that director that one for them, one for me? You know what I'm talking about? Like he does one movie for like the studio systems and for like fans.
Oh,
he does, like,
I know what you're. I've heard that.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Or was it?
I can't remember. I don't think it's Kevin Spacey. I think it's like I think it's a director.
Oh, I said Scorsese, not Kevin
Spacey.
I heard
Kevin Spacey.
I don't think he's doing one for anything, himself or anybody right now.
I hope he comes out with another YouTube. You remember when he did those YouTube videos, but he did the YouTube videos as weird. Frank Underwood.
Those were so weird.
They were great. I was like, what the
dude?
That was so wild, man. I wonder if he'll ever. I don't know what his whole story is, but
it was Martin Scorsese that said that quote. Chris.
Well, look at that.
Well, look at you little film knower.
Ooh. I heard it on a YouTube video in the past week or two, so that's the only reason I know that.
Nice.
Oh, weird.
Educational.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to go with the next one? I think we are. Number 7. An extensive leak published to website Xfire by trusted and renowned industry insider Tom Henderson indicated Ubisoft has some major plans in the works. The story reads in part, quote, according to several sources with direct knowledge of Ubisoft's plans, we can report that a big game showcase event from French publisher Ubisoft has been in the works for some time, end quote. Originally slated for launch around when E3 typically would be, Ubisoft apparently halted plans due to, quote unquote, recent world events, likely the Russian invasion of Ukraine. 20 games in total were planned for some sort of re-reveal, dating, etc. And here's the interesting stuff. So I went through and I put these in somewhat alphabetical order. I cut out all the shit we wouldn't care about. One-time Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLC turned full game Assassin's Creed Rift, which I reported on the show a few months ago, which may come out as soon as this holiday season, if not earlier this year, as well as Assassin's Creed Infinity, which has been rumored as the next big game to come out in 2025. So 2 Assassin's Creed games we know already. The first one is the smaller one. The second one is the bigger one. The already announced expensive and promising Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which is coming alongside the new movies, perhaps even later this year. A sequel, and that comes, I didn't put this in there, but that comes from Massive, which are the guys that do The Division. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. I don't care about Avatar, but I love The Division. A sequel to the commercial dud, but critical darling Immortals Phoenix Uprising. So there you go. Chris, we talk about that game sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is apparently in early production. Much delayed multiplayer game Skull and Bones, which is due out in fiscal 2023. We'll see. That game has been delayed for like 5 years. The remake, which we already know of 2003's Prince of Persia Sands of Time, which is still coming, though it's unknown when. And there's also a 2.5D Prince of Persia project of unknown provenance. This one's for you, Chris. The remake of Splinter Cell in 2002 is due out in 2024, 2025. A racing game codenamed Project Orlando and assumed to be The Crew 3 is another one of the games. And free-to-play shooter to The Division Heartland from original Tom Clancy team Red Storm, which may be out this summer. So I'm really excited about that as well. I can't wait to see a Division game in the middle of the country. I think that's going to be awesome. Not surprisingly, and I thought this was maybe most interesting to some, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is a game cited as being back off the radar, though it's noted that the game is so far down the rabbit hole that Ubisoft feels internally that it simply cannot not release something at this point. So in other words, they understand that Beyond Good and Evil 2 must happen at some point. Like, it has to happen. They can't just... And I don't know what they were thinking. As we know, Michel Ancel's gone. I mean, his other game, remember, he was responsible for that one-time PS4 vaporware game, Wild.
Wild, right.
So...
Wild,
man.
Wild.
So any thoughts here? Anything stand out to you, Chris, other than that Splinter Cell game, which I'm sure you're intrigued by?
Yeah, no, I obviously have a Splinter Cell's near and dear to my heart. I'm curious about the Prince of Persia thing, but honestly, I'm really happy to see Phoenix Rising happening. You know, like I just think Immortals was, you know, I didn't finish that game, like, but there was a real charm about it that I appreciated in comparison to a lot of Ubisoft games at the time. It was a very dense game, like always something to do, like very, very close by, and the combat felt good, and I thought the approach to the tone and just the look of it was interesting and unique and cool, and I like to see games like that get more than one shot, because quite frankly, that was from what I played of that game, that was a really solid, enjoyable time. There's just a lot of other shit around it that pulled me off.
They've shown a decent propensity in the past as a publisher to go back to the well. Like, they seem to not like to invest in one-offs. The original Watch Dogs is not considered a very good game at all, and they went back twice to that. So
yeah,
it's not a huge surprise on one hand, but it is because it didn't seem like it generated any buzz, but people that played it seem to have liked it. It's funny how much you took to it, though, because when I bought it and I played it, and then when it starts and it's very cartoonish and stuff, I was like, nah, and just stopped playing it. And so maybe one day I should go back and try it again. So
it's just a really refreshing Ubisoft game.
I can respect that. Dustin, what stands out to you? Again, I say the Division Heartland is the one that I'm most excited about. That also seems to be the most imminent one. Chris brought up the 2.5D Prince of Persia maybe being interesting too. What's interesting about what Tom Henderson says about that is that they're trying to recapture with that game the essence of like the side-scrolling adventure game, which is really dead.
Like Another World?
Like, they were talking about like, people had used the reference of Inside, but if you think about the old Prince of Persia games, they are side-scrolling action adventure games, but they're more about platforming and survival and all of that. So anyway, what stands out to you here?
Yeah, well, that's actually kind of the funny part that I was thinking is I was like, man, none of these really speak to something that I would be super particularly interested in. I think maybe the Division open world game, because I have played some of those, but it is interesting. The Ubisoft games just don't, I don't know, they don't speak to me on almost any level. I'm trying to think of one that I was like at one point, like I played through a lot of the Assassin's Creed games, but I don't know.
What about Far
really
Cry?
Appealed to me. Far Cry? No. Yeah. So I don't know. They just don't make games that particularly intrigue me. I do have one comment though, that's aside, is that I think it's interesting that they decided to delay things based on the war in Ukraine. And I understand wanting to be sensitive to this, but it's not the first time in this industry, in this time period, that this happened. Recently, Nintendo delayed Advance Wars 1 and 2 indefinitely because of this war. And I get it, but I also am kind of like, I mean, you're already making a game trivializing war to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's just what games are. So it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, does it really make a difference? Like, is the delay of Advance Wars, is Putin like,
Well, I mean, remember there was that game that that was delayed for console launch. I forget the name of it. We talked about it a few weeks ago because it's kind of lapooning the Soviet Union, and it's like, grow up.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? It reminds me most indeed of after Fukushima, when Sony delayed the release of MotorStorm Apocalypse, and it's like, come on, guys. I think we understand that it's a video game and that it's not intentional, and that you're not trying to make light of anything, and that maybe this is the distraction that many people need. Certainly not there, but I just think there's a lot of placation going on based on these mysterious and often made up assumptions about the way people feel about things. And that's fine. I guess it's good to be sensitive, but maybe there's such a thing about being too cautious as well. And
yeah.
But nonetheless, I like Ubisoft games, a lot of them, and I'll be looking forward to some of these. I'm really intrigued by this Avatar game, and I'm intrigued by the comeback of Red Storm. I mean, Red Storm has long been a Ubisoft studio. In fact, Ubisoft started Red Storm as the Tom Clancy studio, and that they kind of get to come back to the Division, and something like the Division, I think is interesting. Now it's free to play, which makes me a little nervous. And my hope is that I could just go in and say, like, can I just pay for this and you can just leave me alone? And maybe that'll be an option, but I doubt it. All right, number 8's a wrap up. It's a brief one. Website Gematsu reports adventure game We Were Here Forever comes to PS4 and PS5 on May 10th. Metroidvania Soldiers comes to PS4 and PS5 on May 19th. Rhythm shooter Soundfall, there's another fall game, comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point this spring. Adventure game A Space for the Unbound comes to PS4 and PS5 at an undetermined point later in 2022. Cartoonish multiplayer game Bare Butt Boxing comes to PS4 and PS5 in 2023. And both strategy RPG Kaiju Wars and tower defense game Slaycation Paradise comes to PS4 and PS5 at an undetermined point in the future. And finally, website Video Games Chronicle reports that Ubisoft's upcoming sports game Roller Champions has been slightly delayed, having been intended for release by the end of March, which has obviously not happened. The game now has a more nebulous late spring launch window, and Push Square has published since we started recording that MX vs. ATV Legends, the racing game, will come to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on May 24th. So you can look forward to that as well. Boys, we have 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience to wrap things up with. As of course, tradition dictates, if you are a newcomer, that we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We could not do it without your support over there, so thank you for that. Infinite Inspiration Zero has a candid question. He says, hello, men of the Sacred Symbols. While this question is primarily directed at Colin, I'm curious to hear what the rest of the gang would have to say. Colin, if you were to have an untimely passing, what would become of Last Stand? Would the company, and specifically Sacred Symbols, cease to function without you at its head, or would it emerge like a Hydra with 2 more to take its place? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I own 100% of the company. I guess we would have to have some sort of legal thing in place. I probably should get that done, like part of my will. But I have no problem with everything continuing without me if people think that they can do it. You know, if I would just ask that the shows be treated with some level of respect. So, for instance, if like Knockback would probably have to end. I don't think Dagan would want to do it with anyone else. But Sacred Symbols can keep going, and I give you guys the verbal okay to do that. And that's it. Dustin, I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah, part of me wonders if in that situation, I think that your blessing of using the name is very much appreciated, but at the same time, it's like you're so attached to the name of this show that it almost makes you wonder, like, maybe Last Stand would go on, but if Chris and I were to do a show together, I don't know if it would feel right to do Sacred Symbols without you. I think that the audience would maybe feel that way as well. Maybe it's reborn in some other clever name or something like that, but I don't know. It would feel weird to me to keep doing it under that name particular, but I don't know. It's funny. My mailbag, I just recorded it yesterday. That's coming out soon. And someone asked me about like future plans, and like I have my hands in other things like streaming. And I mentioned, I was like, because, you know, in case in the untimely situation that if Colin died and then I no longer had employment or Last Stand went under, I need to, at least I want to have my foot in something that I could try to dive into so I don't have to go back to filming dance recitals or something. But it's an interesting question. And the legal aspect is, I don't know who, if you died, if you fell down the stairs after we finished recording, who would then own Last Stand? Your mom, maybe?
I don't know. I do have some sort of will in place. I guess it would go on to. I do have a lot of stuff going to my mom, so maybe she would. I don't know. It's something.
Yeah.
And speaking out about it, Chris, you have any input? I feel like it's something maybe I should figure out. It is funny to talk about it. We're very self-deprecating and we're very dark, obviously, and talking about my own death doesn't bother me at all. But it is true that a lot of people rely on this company, both listeners and viewers, but of course, people that work for it. So maybe it should be something that I should be so flippant about. What do you think?
I don't know, man. If you died, if the Kool-Aid Man came through your door and katana'd you up,
Right.
or whatever it is he does, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of in agreement with Dustin, where like it wouldn't make sense for us to continue to do sacred symbols, because it would feel like it almost like when a cast member leaves a show, but they continue on. It's like, it's still, this is still the same show. And it's like, it's not really the same show. It's a different show entirely now, actually, because like the whole premise of this show is you have like literally the most educated person on PlayStation with 2 other people. that's like you are the defining factor of the show, like literally.
Well, I appreciate that.
So I don't know if it would even be sacred symbols at that point. It would just be like, we would have to, if Dustin and I were to continue the show, it would be like something else.
Right.
We would have to be like, all right, let's come up with a new name for this, because I wouldn't feel right continuing the show.
Well,
it's almost like when you look at like a show that you used to watch, and then you see it's like a whole new, even podcast,
definitely,
like with a whole new cast, and it's like, welcome to this podcast that's been going on for 10 years. Nobody's the same. And it's like, what is this then?
Yeah, people have a lot of complaints about that with Podcast Beyond, which was my original PlayStation podcast on IGN. It's still going. God bless them. But they're like degrees and degrees away from anyone that was on that show back in the day, And I think a lot of people are like, what does this show mean? As opposed to when actually we used to do I was on it a little bit, but old IGN fans might remember that there was an Xbox podcast called 3 Red Lights, which was a really funny, ridiculous podcast that was done by like Dave Clayman and Nate Ahern and all of this, an Xbox podcast. And when they stopped doing it and they left, they actually created Podcasts Unlocked, which is the Xbox podcast now, which was Ryan Clements at the time, but then Ryan McCaffrey. And it would probably be hard to believe that podcast would have any of the same feeling without Ryan McCaffrey. But boy, do they have that shambling Podcast Beyond corpse still going. So yeah. And I think it's most fair to your point. They should have just renamed the show. Or they should have sold us Podcast Beyond like we wanted.
I was going to say, hasn't this happened to you twice?
Yes, and then PS I Love You was my second PlayStation show, and that's still going on without me, which is fine too. But I don't know that.
But it's noticeable.
I'm sorry?
It's noticeable. It's noticeable when that happens. It's like when they recast somebody and they pretend like when Aunt Viv on Fresh Prince was like recasting. It's like, what the fuck? What is happening? It's just weird. It just comes across as like a little bizarre and a little just, I don't know. I'd feel weird about it. We'll make a new podcast. We'll call it Crustin's Corner, and
with 2 Ks to make it extra cringe.
Call it the Slitterhead Boys.
Yeah,
Slitta Boys.
Slitta Boys.
We'll figure something out.
Colin, you got to watch. I mean, we're talking about your death, Ernie Elf. What's your cookies that you're eating?
Oh yeah, by the way, I was worried. So
I
said, right, I went and got. I said it on the show, right? That I went to the doctor to get tested for diabetes because someone in my family got diabetes, like an older person, but I'm totally fine. Like they were like, your blood pressure is excellent, and I think my blood glucose level was like a 94, which is I'm a fucking idiot. I mean, I think we all understand that. So they're giving me all this data and all these things, and I'm just looking at it, and I literally took a picture of it and sent it to my mom, and I'm like, what does this mean? And she's like, and she was like, this means you're actually. They give you all these different ranges, like you're below risk, average risk, you are at average risk, etc. I am below the average risk for diabetes, and I'm like, how? But thank you. Yeah. But also thank you.
That's how I feel too sometimes. I'm like, how the fuck am I skirting by? I feel like Neo, just dodging all of this glucose. I'm like, I don't know how the fuck. But I feel the same way about like business stuff, like the way that you feel. I'm getting all this like, so here are these terminologies, and here's the percentages of like, and here are the different organizations. I'm like, interesting. I'm gonna Google all of this.
Yeah, because
I don't know what the fuck you've just said to me.
It's a complicated world out there, my friend.
Yeah, it's all.
But anyway, what will happen? We'll find out. Come at me and come kill me, and we'll find out.
I'm telling you, Ernie, he's gonna take you out. for what you've been saying.
Well, best not miss. CJ Hines wrote in, said, "Hey CDC, the Hogwarts Legacy coverage this week has been very scattershot. You guys in Game Informer covered it no problem. IGN and GameSpot covered the state of play, but also released a companion piece all about the JK controversy. Kind of Funny briefly spoke about it and then went on for an hour defending everything they talked about. Easy Allies just didn't talk about it at all. How do you feel about gaming outlets refusing to cover a game? Do you think the sales of Hogwarts Legacy will be affected by lack of coverage or J.K. Rowling's or Rowling's? I always say her name wrong. J.K. Rowling's views. Also, I want to acknowledge, in addition to CJ, Owen S. wrote in to us as well with a much more extensive and much more political letter. I read your letter. It is too long for the show. I don't agree with what you said, but I read it, and I appreciate you writing in. So CJ writes in with this and asks about the general coverage of games. Now, I was kidding around before with the conversation with the PR person and stuff, and even after that happened, where I felt like, wow, you're totally rude to me for no reason, I still talked about the game. I feel like you have to be able to swallow your pride in some way and say, like, what is the service to the audience? And what the audience is interested in is Hogwarts Legacy. It is clear as day, based on the traffic that state of play did, that Hogwarts Legacy is going to sell millions and millions of copies. And
yeah,
on all platforms, not just on PlayStation. And I think it's when, let me back up here. We have this MO on this show to play and talk, to play what we want, to talk about games as they come to us, and to try to be as holistic with the news as possible. And anything less, I think, would not be being true to the whole intention of the show. But within the objective nature of games news and what's important, I think it's important to acknowledge that while games fall outside of the realm of our interest or expertise, they are still happening on the platforms we're supposed to cover. So earlier in the show, as an example, Dustin went into the Gran Turismo 7 details, which we didn't really know anything about. None of us play Gran Turismo, but Gran Turismo is a relevant game to the audience. It would be stupid to not cover Gran Turismo on this show. And that's why we did a whole Sacred Symbols Plus episode about it. That's why we're going to do a whole nother one about it in a few weeks. And Hogwarts Legacy is the same thing. Regardless of how you feel about J.K. Rowling or what she said or frankly didn't say, certainly about the transgender issue and women issues and all those kinds of things, is it our place to make some sort of capricious political call that injures the audience's understanding of a game, which is why they come here? And to me, I feel like let's talk about everything surrounding Hogwarts Legacy. We don't have to just focus on the game. I went back and listened, which I rarely do. I went back and listened to our conversation, and we talked a lot about the game, and I was really proud of that. Like the controversy stuff didn't come up till afterwards. It's still going to come up. It's still going to come up a lot, I think, and it's still going to have to be something that's talked about. But we have to cut through the bullshit, acknowledge that the conversation's happening, acknowledge the controversy, and still talk fairly about the game. And that's it. Hogwarts Legacy to me looks phenomenal. I can't wait. I hope it does come out this year. I don't believe it's going to, but I hope it does. Mm-hmm. Chris, let's go to you first. How do you feel about Hogwarts Legacy? Now we've had a week to kind of relax, especially because we recorded that segment going into it pretty hot, because we had recorded all of Sacred Symbols last week. Then we went and watched the Hogwarts Legacy thing. Then we came back and recorded a pickup. So we didn't really have any time to even marinate. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about the nature of the coverage and how it's being talked about now with a week's reflection? And how do you feel about my kind of stance that we kind of have to put aside in some way our politics, or in some way our social hindrances for the fairness of the game, to at least acknowledge its existence? I think we did this pretty well, for instance, with when what's that game, Dustin, with the Stalin guys?
Disco
Elysium. Yeah.
I have a political problem with those guys, but we're not going to pretend the game didn't come out. I just don't understand that. Yeah. That's just weird to me.
And anyway, by the way, Disco Elysium is very well received, and it's apparently a very, very good game.
I'd like to play it.
And I just think that's part of the job. I don't necessarily begrudge people for taking it. Obviously, like, people's companies are their own; they can do what they want, and if they choose to draw the line in the sand here, that's fine. My issue is just to look at that game and pretend like that's not objectively a very impressive showcase. That bothers me. Like that's like you don't have to like Harry Potter at all. I don't care about Harry Potter in the slightest, really. Like I liked the Chamber of Secrets game on the original Xbox in 2002 or whatever. That's like my deepest connection with it. I don't really care about the movies. I'm not connected to that at all. But that was a very impressive state of play. And that game just looks objectively impressive. I don't think you can come away from that state of play thinking that it looks anything less than very ambitious. You know, whether or not it lands or not, that's a different conversation. We can have that conversation when it's out. And I just feel like my frustration when it comes to the coverage of this game by a lot of different outlets and a lot of different figures in the industry is, you know, if this is your interpretation of J.K. Rowling, if this is the line, how could you possibly be consistent on this line? Like, how could it possibly be like J.K. Rowling's a transphobe, therefore I will not cover Hogwarts Legacy? But I have no doubt that there will be a review of Metal Slug Tactics or something of that nature. I'm sure they're going to talk about all sorts of different games that have very, very problematic ties to companies and individuals and organizations that have their hand in the literal murder of people or the literal subjugation of human rights. So is that same line in the sand going to be drawn for things that, in my view, are far worse? I don't think so. I think you're going to see coverage of Metal Slug Tactics.
Right, of course.
I think you're going to see coverage of all these different games. And to me, it's like that's where the frustration is. If somebody wants to really draw that line in the sand, that's fine by me, you know? But the frustration is I know that the consistency will not be there for these other things. And it's just like, that's a little silly to me, you know?
Well, I agree. Again, I say it over and over again, and I know it's really influencing people, so I really want to beat this drum as much as I can, which is trying to live a moralistic economic life in the United States or in the West is impossible. And if you want to try to put yourself in that box, good luck. But don't be surprised when people come at you for the different inconsistencies, because a lot of people are like, it's a whataboutism and all that. I'm like, no, it's not. I think his name's Abram that writes at that website.
Oh, the Fanbyte. I have it pulled up right now because I was going to mention it. The Fanbyte article.
So Fanbyte's this video game website that is owned by Tencent. Which is already
ethically wrong from a coverage perspective. I mean, they hit the ground at the wrong point.
And so to me, I would say if I had ownership that dubious, again, why does Tencent matter? Because Tencent, all major corporations in China are endorsed and sanctioned by the Chinese government, and 25% of Tencent's employees are CCP card carriers, while only 10% of society is. So 2.5% or 2.5 times higher per capita. It's a big deal when you're in the tech industry in China. And I guarantee you, Fanbyte's not going to have much to say about the Uyghur concentration camps, and they're not going to have much to say about Taiwan. And if you want to prove me wrong, do it. Do it. But until then, I especially I don't want to hear much from these characters on the periphery that have no business telling you anything about morals and values, whilst Tencent and the Communist Party of China are giving them their money directly. It's not some sort of thing where it's like, oh, they own 5% of this, or they own 10% of this, or they shadowly have this. It's like, no, they own 100% of your company. So, Dustin, what do you think about this? Because you said you wanted to kind of follow up on it.
Yeah, the Fanbyte thing I think is the most egregious, just in that they posted this article that says, in case you missed it, everything from today's Hogwarts Legacy state of play. Here's the first sentence. I'll be straight with you. This is not a recap of Hogwarts Legacy, WB Games' latest attempt at applying their Portkey Interactive to make more Wizarding Worlds game. And they go on to basically say that they, as a staff, didn't want to engage in the marketing. There's no sides in the debate. It's morally wrong. What JK said was morally wrong. And we're going to give away something and link to charities, which is their prerogative to do so.
Certainly.
Obviously.
No one, and I would never deny that. But just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would never deny it. But that's what I'm saying. Don't be surprised when I come back to you. That's it. You can have your stance. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Just the end of this article says, I personally do not care what games you want to play or how you want to engage with them. I'm not here to tell you not to buy anything or demand anything be banned. If that still makes you angry, well, I don't really care about that either. Wow, really setting the tone. You personally don't care about what games play. But if it makes you angry, I don't really care about that either. We get what you're trying to say, dude. Like, you spelled it out very clearly. So it's like one of those things. It's like, if you didn't want to cover it, just don't cover it.
Oh, Imran. I'm sorry. I called him
Yeah.
Imran before.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, that's too. It's like, you are covering it. You just
did.
covered it. You just did it. Except I don't know. It's confusing. I want to make it clear too. Like, I don't have a problem with like individuals making an individual choice. Like, if you are like, I have no connections to the LGBTQ community at all. I'm not trans or anything. Like, I don't know that experience. And if if you've seen J.K. Rowling's opinions and you feel like you don't want to support that, by all means exercise that right. If you are an individual, if you're just playing games, and I respect that wholeheartedly. But when you work in this industry and your job is to cover games, I just think it's a little ridiculous to come at it from this perspective and then just kind of like pretend like everything else isn't a problem.
Well, that's
where my
that's
stance
exactly
is.
right. And I think it brings up 2 points, Chris, which is number one, this game has no prayer being treated fairly when it comes out. Number one. Number two,
it also has no prayer of failing.
No, it doesn't. But critically, it's not going to do well as it should have. Maybe some people even overcompensate on that, which I can imagine. But I think we all know what time it is when it comes to that. And number two is that I think it's exactly what you said. I don't go around moralizing to people. And when people hit me with the whataboutism charge, I'm like, but I'm not telling you to do anything. Don't you understand that? I'm not telling you to do anything at all. Do whatever the fuck you want. But we have a job to do, and we're going to talk about certain things here. And I am troubled by the people's just kind of shooing away of like, oh, what about this and what about that? And I'm like, no, literally, what about that? When a level infinite game is published, what about that? See, I can safely play those games because I talk about all of the problems on this show, but we don't ask people to make their own moral choices. We simply point out that they can be made and that they should if we want to have any change. But I'm not putting a gun to your head or telling you need to make any certain decision. We even talked about how like the nightmare scenario of what if Tencent bought Patreon, right? And it's like, well, we would have to work within the confines of that. You better believe I'm going to probably call every episode Taiwan is a country 1, Taiwan is a country 2, Taiwan is, like just do as much as I possibly can to like be on the inside. And if I were at Fanbyte and I really cared and I wasn't trying to moralize and virtue signal to people, I'd have a lot to say about Tencent. But they can't have anything to say about Tencent. And if they want to prove it wrong, say something. Just say something. You wrote a flippant article about Hogwarts Legacy, totally within your right, and that's totally fine. You could do the very same thing for Tencent. You could put nice little links at the bottom to places that are trying to get money and information and aid into the northwest of China and all the rest. You could do that. You can write a story about how Taiwan is real and how it was wrong that Arc System Works took it out of the lore for Guilty Gear. You can do that, but you don't. So when you only choose one thing and not the other, then people are going to obviously bring those things up. And it's not a whataboutism. It's pointing out an obvious hypocrisy and a choice that you've made. We make the choice to simply put things forward, but we're not going to make any decisions for you, and we're not going to moralize, and we're certainly not going to make you feel bad about the decisions you can make. And by the way, Hogwarts Legacy looks great. I'll just reiterate it. It looks awesome. Shout out to Avalanche. Shout out to Troy Levitt. Shout out to Dustin Furman for no reason.
Thank you.
Michael Limo wrote in and said, hey, fellas, those stupid new Xbox Sonic controllers make me miss the days of weird license controllers. I'll never forget the SpongeBob PS2 and GameCube controller or that terrible NFL line of PS2 controllers. Do you have that one third-party controller that you remember from your childhood? It's funny because I'm older than you guys, as you know, and the audience knows I'm about 10 years older than you guys. And I always had this disdain, this guttural, soul-filled disdain for third-party peripherals. Even when I was a little kid, like if it wasn't a Nintendo thing, I'd be like, nah, I don't want this fucking garbage. And I remember making one exception, which was I bought the third-party memory card for PS1, 1997, which failed, of course. And that taught me the harsh lesson of reality, which is that you get what you pay for. And so I always went in for the first-party stuff. And the only company that I truly remember making fun first-party peripherals was Nintendo, specifically during the N64 generation, with the Pikachu shit and all that. And I didn't have any of that, but I remember that they were the only ones that was like, well, at least it's official, and you would get that. But otherwise, I like the clean-cut, sleek stuff, even since I was a little kid. And when people had all the bootleg NES stuff and SNES stuff, I was like, get that shit out of here. You know, I was 8 years old. I knew something was wrong with it. I wanted to hang them with that wire. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Chris, I feel like you must have some sort of controller that you know, like some third-party controller. Is it? Am I right in this instinct or no?
So I feel like we are very much alike in this way, where I would be gifted sometimes like a Mad Catz, or like here's a Logitech wireless original Xbox controller, and it's like you use them and you're like, it's cool that this is doing what it's doing. Like, oh, it's cool that this Mad Catz controller lights up. That's kind of neat. It's cool that my Xbox controller is wireless and I don't have to worry about that weird wire like taking up all this space. That's cool. I actually kind of miss there's something about the physical sensation of doing that to the controller that I kind of miss, like wrapping it when you're done. But I just always like preferred the official first party, like here's an official PlayStation 2 controller, all black. Here's an official PlayStation controller, all gray. Here's a Xbox controller, all black. Here's a 360 controller, all white. Occasionally, I would have gotten like the colored ones, like with like special.
Sure,
editions.
I had
like
I had those. Yeah.
I had a Gears of War like red Xbox 360 controller that I adored. I loved that thing. It was like blood red. It was so cool. But I try to avoid third party peripherals like the plague. Like I just loathe them. And they're so flimsy. They're always so cheap and they break. Not even like in a shattery way. They just like stop. Oh, cool. It just doesn't work anymore. It's just like neat. Oh, my analog stick doesn't stay. It doesn't like go back to the center.
Yeah, like if you had it's all you have to know is that if you had a table full of like GameCube controllers, who's going to select the third party controller over the Wavebird? It's not going to happen. Anyway, Dustin, how do you feel? Do you have a story similar to Michael's about your SpongeBob PS2 controller, perhaps?
No, so I did have one third-party PS2 controller that had a unique feature. Some of you may remember this. It was called the Nyko Airflow controller.
Oh, did it have like...
And this was a controller
fans?
that had little vents on the side, and it would like keep your hands cool.
That's
and
ridiculous.
I think I had some like birthday money when I was in elementary school, and I thought, whoa, that sounds so cool. And then you get it, and it's just...
That's why you need a big brother like I had to protect you from spending money like that, because my brother used to do that shit all the time. You know,
yeah.
You don't want that.
So I think that's the only one that I can think of that I had. I was guilty of... I've mentioned before on the show that a lot of my time growing up was with my uncle, who was just 4 years older than me, and we would play Nintendo 64. And I think I often got stuck with the Mad Catz controller, if I remember correctly. But it did have an advantage. Some of these third-party controllers had turbo buttons, which if you're playing Mario Party and you're able to secretly turn that on, that's definitely going to turn the tide quickly.
Yeah.
But third-party stuff... I'm so glad that it's
a cheater's controller. It's a cheater's controller. It's like literally like a controller for the scum of the earth.
Dude, there was actually, I remember specifically Phantasy Star Online 2 or not Phantasy Star Online 2, episodes 1 and 2 or the original Xbox. I remember going to a friend's house who had a third-party controller with a turbo button, because there was this thing called the box trick, which you could like max level your character by this indestructible box that would give you XP. So that was probably my last interaction. But yeah, I'm glad these are gone. Good riddance.
Yeah, I've said it before, but
they're not gone actually.
Well, no, they're not.
They still sell them for a Switch.
But I'm not. I don't go down that road, and I have such fond memories of N64 controllers. We had 3 N64 controllers and then a steering wheel, and so when we would play GoldenEye, I've noted in the past, the loser would play with the steering wheel, and you became awesome. Incredibly proficient. All of us were nuts with the steering wheel in the GoldenEye. It was hysterical, like with the pedals and everything. It was good shit. I'll always remember that. I have very fond memories of that. In fact, I just talked to my good friend Mike Pope, who I used to do that with. Dylan Michael wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, is there a lost or dying genre of game you feel like nobody is making, or at least making well? For me, it's the cinematic platformer. Usually characterized as a platformer where the player character has a realistic weight to them, no health, and is guided not by collectibles and power-ups, but simply want to finish the story. The last ones I remember are Inside and The Last Guardian, and I desperately want more." The Last Guardian, I wouldn't consider that a platformer. I guess it kind of is. But yeah, I guess it kind of is. Anyway, Chris, let's go to you first on this one. Is there a genre that you feel like is lost to time that you'd like to see revisited? There are a few that come to mind for me, but a lot of this has to do with the ebbs and flows of what the industry wants. And when he was talking about cinematic platformers, I was also thinking about games like Another World, which I hate, and some of that other stuff. I fucking hate that game. In fact, I gave that game a 4, I think, at IGN when it came to Vita and PS4, and people were like fucking livid with me. I think that was like one of my most unpopular reviews. But is there anything missing that you feel like we could use a little bit more of?
I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this, but stealth.
Oh yeah,
like I miss proper stealth games, like actual ones. Like where?
Let me ask you this: are you into the sniper games or any of those like Sniper Elite games or anything? Because it's kind of like a little bit of that, right? Like you're.
Yeah, the thing with Sniper Elite is the thing with the whole framework of that game is it's just like I understand what you're saying, but I like the sneaking around and the up close and personal aspect of like Splinter Cell and those kinds of things where it's like you're sneaking around and you're shoving a camera under a door and you're like just trying to see if anybody's around. Then you're shooting the lights out and like creeping through the dark. That shit's really fun to me. But Sniper Elite's more like long range.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I can't play those games because it's all about mechanics. You know, like the bullet drops and shit. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not.
Yeah,
I can't.
Is there wind that you have to
it's crazy. It's super cool. I think there's a few studios that work on those sniper type games that are really neat. But yeah, I was just curious about if that was something that you considered as a.
Yeah, it's those. I dabbled in those, but I think they serve a different function in my mind. Like I don't think of them as stealth games really, even though it is technically you're hidden and you're taking people out.
All right, Chris. I'm sorry, Dustin. What is your take here? Do you any missing genre that you'd like to see return?
It's sad for me, not that I'm like a huge aficionado of this genre, but to see immersive, like big AAA immersive sim games kind of fall by the wayside, particularly thinking about Dishonored 1 and 2, and Chris recently being into Prey. We're still get those types of games in the indie space, particularly Weird West is coming up pretty soon, which is from one of the directors of Dishonored. And so I'm very much excited to check that out. So maybe that. And then I don't know, genres are, it's cool now with such a bigger development community in the indie space that even genres that aren't necessarily as much represented in the mainstream, you can usually find some indie game that's doing it. It's maybe not quite to the level of the AAA, but thinking about like mascot platformers or something, like Nintendo still does a few of them. Like that Kirby game that's coming out, I think Friday, it actually looks really, really appealing to me right now. It just looks like a nice, fun
I'm excited about that
game to bounce off of right now. So stuff like that. And there are smaller titles like Hat in Time.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just downloaded that a few weeks ago again.
Yeah. But I love those games, and so I wish Nintendo still did them consistently because I do think that they're the king. But it seems like they kind of just slowed down.
Well, we had that like small resurgence of mascot platformers with like Yooka-Laylee and Snake Pass and a few others where people were trying to, and Hat in Time was around that same time. But for me, guys, the answer is it's kind of multifaceted because I feel like there are a few decent answers, and I feel like if you go into the indie space, a lot of these things are fully alleviated. But one thing that I feel like we need, you were talking about 3D platformers, is I think we need more 2D platformers, and I'm talking about Mario like platformers. One of the things I'm excited about our new game, which we'll announce soon, is that it is an old school style SNES style platformer. It's no bells or whistles. It's not brutally hard. It's not one death. It's not weird mechanic. It's just a game like you would have found on the Super Nintendo or the Genesis. I would actually think even more like the Genesis, to be honest. And which you guys can make that determination when you see it. And I feel like there are not many of those. A game just, as you said, just to play. There's not a gimmick. There's not something about it. It's not Celeste, which is like depressing. It's not, and it's all cool that all exists, but it's just, I'm excited about our upcoming game because I feel like it explores this 2D genre that has either gone into Metroidvania stuff, which is great, but I think we're getting a lot of that, or it's getting into the hyper difficult space like Super Meat Boy and VVVV, whatever that game was called, and all those other games. and or down well and all that kind of shit. And I feel like I want to make a game that's like you would have rented in 1993 for your Super Nintendo or your Genesis. And so it would be cool to get those. And I think another genre that I think is coming back is the Final Fantasy Tactics like strategy tactical role playing game. It feels like there are more of those coming, and that's exciting as well. And Triangle Strategy is the most recent. Nate Brearley wrote in and said, "Hey gents, rapper Lil Durk, that could be or not be a real person, I don't know, was interviewed by Forbes recently, and he was quoted as saying the following, quote, 'There are a lot of non-believers when it comes to the metaverse, but it's proven to be the future. We've been working on a deal with Grand Theft Auto where we will have our own world within the game, and I will record myself doing videos along with live concerts. So we are staying ahead, and the world will have to catch up,' end quote. While this is most likely Dirk just talking a big game and exaggerating a potential deal with his music being used in GTA, could this be something more? I really hope it's not a sign of what's to come with GTA Online or even GTA 6 doing the whole Fortnite and Travis Scott live concert thing, live in-game events, etc. While this undoubtedly worked for Fortnite, I can't really see it working well in the GTA space. Thoughts?" It's funny he says this, Chris, because I disagree with him. I think that this is the space where that kind of stuff works. And I think part of the reason why GTA Online is so special is because it is so social and so shareable. I think a lot of people play it by themselves, but in my experience, knowing friends and family that play it, it's a very social experience. And so having that like experience in Grand Theft Auto, I feel like maybe makes a little bit more sense, but in other places. But I wanted to focus more on this idea of the metaverse. Do you believe that we are inexorably marching towards this digital existence? I was listening to, what was it? It was Lex Friedman was interviewing one of the heads of Meta, the Facebook owners company, or what they turned into. And they were basically just saying, actually, it wasn't one of the heads, it was Mark Zuckerberg. And he was saying that they have meetings in Metaverse where it's like you're there and you can like lean into people and whisper to them and only they hear it and like all this weird shit. And I'm like, are we really going to go down this road? It just seems so unsettling and Black Mirror-esque. And I can't help but wonder, to Nate's point with this guy like Lil Durk and others, are they just trying to sell us a false good of sale, or are they right? Because there's really only one way or the other. I just wonder what you think.
I feel like this is just a really modern attempt at placing some gimmicky name on something that already exists and has already existed for a very, very long time. We've already had Second Life and MMOs for a long time. Like we've already had this like, oh, this virtual space where we're chilling out and we're hanging. We've had this for a long time, and it didn't. Yeah, literally. Well, PlayStation Home, like every game that you hang out with people in and you shoot the shit in, or any like VR experience that you like can do with other people, that is what this is pretending to be. It's literally just, I feel like this is just an attempt to maybe place some uniform blanket over a term for something that was typically viewed as kind of separate, or like just kind of like a side effect of what other industries kind of inevitably kind of became, like things like games and things like VR. We didn't have a word for what it meant to just be social in a game, because when we're like fishing in Fortnite or something, or when we're like just hanging out in like VR chat's not really a game, really. Like there's no win state, there's no fail state, there's no objective. It's just kind of this virtual space that you hang out in. And I think the word metaverse is just a way to kind of give that a name. And simultaneously, I feel like all these companies, specifically like Facebook, is just really, really late to the party, and they're trying desperately to catch up. And they're just like, hey man, Fortnite's been having concerts for a while now. So the idea that like metaverse is being like, wouldn't it be crazy? Wouldn't it be fucking absolutely wild if you could like talk to a person in like a virtual reality and only they hear it? Oh, you mean like Halo 2's proximity chat? What are you talking about? None of this is new. Like, and I think people are like really afraid of it because like all of these companies are pretending like it's new, and they've never heard that term. So they're like, what the fuck is this weird shit that's being foisted onto me? I don't like it. This has been a thing for a while. We've already had these virtual play spaces. We've already had this kind of simulation of reality. This is not new, and it will never usurp reality because it hasn't. It has not, and it won't. But they're definitely trying to make it that way. They're definitely trying to push it, because the longer you can keep people invested in like a world that isn't real, the more that you can control that world. And I think that's really enticing to advertisers and big corporations in general. And I think that's what's happening. Like, that's my long-winded explanation of what I think is happening. But to address the point of Nate's question, I think it's weird that I think it's weird that Nate thinks it makes more sense for a live concert to happen in Fortnite than in Grand Theft Auto. Like, I feel like Grand Theft Auto Online is almost what Second Life wanted to be. Like, it's like, yeah, this is exactly where a concert would happen. Why wouldn't it happen in a free roam open world space instead of a battle royale game? You know, it makes way more sense in GTA Online. So if anything, I'm actually super interested to see what GTA Online does, because I think that will be the space where a lot of this kind of weird, transient kind of experimental events occur successfully.
It reminds me a lot of, like, because what you're saying, it's interesting. What are we trying to get? Are we trying to get a new life, like a new experience, like a new lifestyle? In that case, it reminds me a little bit of that Black Mirror episode San Junipero, which is an interesting episode. I won't spoil for people here, but a lot about that. And I have these fantasies in my mind, and we talk about them on Knockback, of VR immersion so compelling that you can have one day, like, I think like old companies will come back in name only, like, and I use the example of like KB Toys, and it'll be like, can you just call up KB Toys in 1988 and let me walk through it, and let me leaf through action figures that would have been on the pegs, and let me interact with the game shelves and like do all that kind of stuff. And like, that's not a game, that's an experience, that's a lifestyle, that's a change that could be. And San Junipero, I think, gets a little bit into this. That could be like an addiction and like what you end up doing. And that's totally fine. That's neither here nor there. But I just don't know exactly what they're explaining. So Dustin, what do you think about like the when people talk about metaverse and they don't talk about games, it just doesn't sound like they're talking about what we think they're talking about. And maybe Chris is right that a lot of this stuff already exists and they're just packaging it differently.
I think that a lot of my thoughts are pretty similar to Chris, in that I think metaverse, the term the metaverse, first of all, is stupid, just because it's Facebook trying to imply, or old Facebook, that they are going to be the metaverse, when it's like there's going to be multiple VR locations for whatever. And I think what is just interesting thinking about this is that we already live in the quote unquote metaverse. It's just our form of interacting with it is not in a VR headset. We're doing a podcast virtually through a computer, through our job, that's going to be fed out to thousands of people virtually, that they're going to listen to potentially on their job, on their computer, that is done virtually or from home. And they interact with communities of people they don't know, that they maybe have a stronger connection with than the actual community around them. I know more people like have somewhat, in some sense, a stronger connection to the Last Stand Discord community than the people that live in the 3-block radius around me. In fact, I'm going to say that's definitely true. So there's no if and when we move virtually. We're here right now. Your bank account is virtual. You can pull it up. You order food on your phone and someone drops it off at your door. The quote unquote metaverse is here. It's just the idea of interacting with it through VR specifically. And so, like Chris said with Fortnite, I mean, Fortnite has been doing these metaverse style concerts. It's just not through VR.
And they got by the way, they bought Harmonix specifically to support music in Fortnite. So.
Right. So that's you see companies like Facebook that want to try to get ahead and be the singular location of what, like, okay, how do we unify all this stuff together, which is kind of a very scary thing to think about, it being Facebook being the one that's trying to, I don't want to say create a monopoly, but they're trying to be the place. And I just don't know if that will work out. But yeah, expect more of this stuff. That's why NFTs are being pushed as well, because this idea of digital ownership in the idea of this metaverse stuff makes some sense. I can understand the push, but it's
the metaverse makes sense. It's just NFTs continue to make less sense as the metaverse makes more, because like the whole reason why theft is a bad thing is because it's taking something away from somebody. If you have something, if you have like, oh, here's my NFT, and I steal it, and I could steal it from you, and you don't even realize that I've stolen it from you because you still have it. I just have a perfect copy of it. Why is that bad? Why is the argument? Like, how could you possibly make a moral argument against stealing something that can't really be stolen? It falls apart so fucking quickly. Like, it's insane. And why is it wrong for me to sell that stolen thing if it's not doing you any harm? If you're not losing the thing, it's hilarious. But
a lot of things recently are falling
NFTs.
Apart under even the most basic of scrutiny. So NFTs are not alone. Black Magic Fuckery the Bussy Butcher wrote in. The final inquiry says, "Hey boys, serious question. Are we about done with crafting systems in AAA open world games? Why are we performing canned pickup animations until a UI element declares our satchel's full, opening said satchel and holding X several times to craft for a consumable that could have just been a pickup in the open world? This is gameplay in the same way that a spouse's extramarital affair is a social outing. Keep that chicken quiet, all right. Thank you, Pussy Butcher, for writing in, as always. Appreciate you. Dustin, let's go to you first. How are you feeling about crafting? The state of crafting.
I hate crafting, dude.
Yeah.
I was disappointed when I saw crafting was in Elden Ring, but luckily it's not.
Is that the first game? Is it the first From game that has it? Well, I mean, in the Souls games?
Yeah, it must, right?
Yeah. As far as like finding different materials out in the world, yeah, it is. And it's not too bad in Elden Ring. In fact, I didn't even use it very much. I was insistent on getting as many recipes as I could and then never used any of the materials. I don't know. I didn't find it that compelling aspect of the game. But yeah, I totally understand this, and that it just seems like sometimes like creating extra barriers in order to do something, like our friend the Bussy Butcher has said. But as far as this idea, are we done with crafting systems in AAA open world games? Not to retread too much on our previous conversation about, specifically Elden Ring and Horizon and the contrast between them and how they approach open worlds, I feel like there is a conversation right now. It's like maybe we have over systemed, we have too many systems in some of these games, and maybe an approach like Elden Ring, which is not perfect and has issues, but maybe there's something to consider there, that less systems sometimes can be more, which, don't get me wrong, Elden Ring still has plenty of systems. Some of them I can find quite annoying, whether it's weapons, system upgrades, and different stats and stuff like that. It still has a decent amount of that, but it is something to think about. Less is more sometimes. And I think sometimes certain games have lost sight of that.
I'm thinking here of like recent games that I had crafted in, and really Horizon's the only one that really forced it on me. You're crafting constantly in that game, which I don't really mind. I think it's a system that needs to be revisited, much like quest logs and stuff, where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And what I will say is that I'm interested in the telemetry that they get about who is using this stuff in their games. Because when I see like a cooking system in a Far Cry, for instance, I'm like, who's doing this? Who's doing this? Who's cooking in Far Cry? I'm only crafting things that are because of animal skins, because the game's kind of telling me to do it, but I'm kind of happy just finding things as they are. I don't really feel like, to his point, I find much pleasure in going one layer below that. It's like, if you want me to, just give me the arrows, I don't need to make them out of wood and flint and shit. But I understand that some people enjoy that, and I'll be interested, much like with many systems and subsystems in role-playing games, how these are managed in future role-playing games. Because I know someone, or probably a confluence of many games, is going to start getting these questions right, and they're going to really start delivering, hopefully, some really new and interesting shit we can't even imagine. If it stays the same, then I think these questions are going to become more profound as we ask ourselves what we're doing. And it will probably get reduced down to just the barest gameplay essence for people. And we'll have like some sort of reset, which will be interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't like crafting systems typically. Like, I find them really unengaging and really boring and bland, and they just take me out of the game, really, just to do a bunch of shit that I really could have just found this stuff in the open world and been a little bit more rewarded for it. Like, I specifically remember Skyrim had like a huge alchemy thing, and like you could craft your own armors, you can craft your own weapons and stuff. Isn't that cool? And I was like, I'd rather just like kill a thing and loot it, Like, I don't know if I want to sit around mixing potions like I'm fucking Harry Potter or some shit. Like, I want to go out and adventure. I don't want to sit in a dungeon kitchen.
Right. You don't want to
for like
repair your
3
broken
hours.
equipment in Zelda over and over again.
Yeah. No, I just find it really boring. I will say though, I like the way Elden Ring handles it because like you're just sort of picking up materials anyway, and as long as you find the cookbook, like the receipt or not the receipt, the recipe for it, you can just sort of like browse through your crafting menu and just look at like all of the things you want to craft. You don't have to figure out like what you need for what, you know, like there's no like, it's actually very handholdy in that way, which is kind of interesting. I think it just sort of like, you can craft arrows. Do you want to craft arrows? And it's like, yes, I want arrows. You know, I like that approach. I don't like trying to figure out like, what do I need? How many of these do I need exactly to make this? But interestingly enough, in Breath of the Wild, the cooking system in that game, I really like. I don't know why. I think it's like the music that plays when you cook, and it's just so.
It's pretty jolly.
I don't know. It's like it makes you feel nice, and like there are interesting different recipes that you can mix, and like they give you like really like unique dishes that give you like certain cold resistances and certain things. Like there's certain, I don't know. Like I think crafting systems really depend on how well they're done and how much they're forced on the player. Like you could go through the entirety of Breath of the Wild and not cook anything, you know, and you could go through the entire Elden Ring game and you could probably not craft much. And Skyrim, I didn't craft at all. But in Horizon, you have to craft, you know, and luckily in Horizon, they know that you have to craft, so they make that system a little bit more bearable. They make it a little bit more easy to do. But it is still a system that, like, I'm not the biggest fan of. So I just think it all depends on implementation and how much the developer overcomplicates a system like that, because it can get really complicated really easily for very little payoff once you're done crafting. It's like, oh, cool. I got the thing that I knew I was going to get anyway. Like I don't know. It's a weird. Destiny 2 right now has a weapon crafting system for the first time ever, and it sucks. It's like I don't engage with it at all. I'm like, this is so obtuse and so stupid. And it was like the one thing I loved about it. I loved Destiny 2 specifically because it's like, wow, an RPG, and I don't have to craft a bunch of stupid shit. And it's like, oh, here it is. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. My assumption is that it's there for someone, but I don't know who that person is.
And it should be there for the people who like it, but it shouldn't be forced on anybody, and it shouldn't be the only way to get through the game. Like if you enjoy that stuff, I think by all means, if you want to be like some alchemist, I think there's a reason for that in RPGs. If you want to live out that kind of like that character of like, yeah, I'm an alchemist and I focus on mixing potions, and I understand why there's a fun role playing aspect to that, and that's awesome. But it should always be a choice. You know, it should always be something that the player can dictate themselves. And fortunately, I think we've gotten a lot better in recent years at that. I do think, because I remember, man, I don't know, like mid 2010s, for some reason, I remember crafting was in fucking everything. Like 2016, 2017, I remember it being like a big thing where I was like, I would see crafting in something and I'd be like, oh.
Because everything's just latent in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Everyone's playing the next big thing when they're in pre-production, and then 5 years later, there it is. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the last question we have. Thank you for submitting it. Thank you, boys, for your attention today, your kindness, of course, as always. Chris, you have any closing comments?
Nah, man, I'm really looking forward to playing Returnal tonight.
Very good.
I'm looking forward to getting my ass stomped again.
Very good. Yeah, tonight I'm gonna get back to Elden Ring and start Ghostwire, I think, tomorrow myself. We're recording on Thursdays as we always do. Dustin, closing comments.
I want to shout out the 7th birthday of Bloodborne, which I believe is today. Yes. And a lot of people ask me all the time, when is it? What From game should I play first? And if maybe you don't want to dive into Elden Ring, but you have free access to Bloodborne, there's an event right now called Return to Yharnam, which is a thing for fans of the game or newcomers that everyone is encouraged to start playing the game. Literally, it starts today, the day of recording, but it'll still be going on. It's a 1 week period where the entire hardcore Bloodborne community gets together to do co-op and PvP once again in this game. So now is the time. If you want to play Bloodborne, go, because there will be co-op partners for you to play with.
Nice.
So shout out. One of my favorite games ever.
And I'm glad you said that, because I forgot last week to shout out, it was Journey's 10th birthday.
Right.
And
yeah.
I totally forgot to bring that up, even though it was in the notes. So happy birthday to that game as well. What I would argue is one of the great PlayStation games. And total mind fuck, that game. I don't know. That game really did something to me. So 10 years old. But guys, that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand, Sacred Symbols, Defining Duke, Knockback. We appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you. Please do consider supporting us on Patreon. Leave us nice reviews on podcast services. You can follow us on YouTube, etc., and so on. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.